What up, gamers? Hi. I am here now. It's finally time. There's just an ad. Give me a second. Now the ad is over.
This time, we've made sure to add uniques with a focus on mid and in-game tiers to make sure there are more exciting items to find for higher level characters. Let's look at some examples. Embrace your inner devil with Chernobog's Pillar. It grants you a large amount of fire damage based on your block chance. The Coming Calamity allows you to become a true master of the elements, granting you all 3 Elemental Herald skills without costing any spirit. At the same time, it penalizes enemy resistances. Wastegate is a belt useful for builds using a single resource like Blood Magic or Archmage builds. With this belt, you can use 2 Life Flasks or 2 Mana Flasks. It's up to you. Now, we could go through these all day, but we'll leave most of them for you to discover. Suffice to say, though, we want there to be way more cool things to find. Over time, our goal is to add a unique to every single base item type at a minimum, so that you can chance any base in the game. Now, given that we have the Huntress, we have a set of unique spares from early game all the way through to end game as well. One example is Scyther's Spear, which combines bleed and fire in a powerful way. It allows your ignites to be aggravated, dealing substantial...
Alright, boys. Reveal is nice, but have you heard of the trailer? Oh my god, it's happening. Hold up. Give me a second. There we go. So, I was away. I have no idea what this reveal is. It clearly shows a new class. So, poggers?
We as Mary are guided by the Spirit. It provides prey, shelter, even love. But for me, one day, all that were changed.
Love me some Asmiri
The
lore.
Spirit, it showed me something. Something forbidden.
Oh, the skill gems.
And to defend all I loved, I used it. I lost everything that day. But fate weren't finished with me yet.
That is the lore of the Asmiri, right? You're not allowed to use the skill gem.
I'll right the wrongs I've done. I'll do what I must, no matter the cost. I will hear the Spirit once more.
Ooh, nice combo. By the way, I played the Huntress during ExileCon. It was the best. Oh, Jesus. It was probably the best class to play. Okay, but then some sort of like absorb, some weird detonate dead. Right, we know about the Roa. Sweet, love to see it. Hell yeah. Jesus. 25 new skills. My guess is all about spears. Asmirian Wisps. Okay. Rogue Exiles are in the game now. Love it. 100 new support gems. 100 new uniques. And new extension classes. Okay, that seemed like Essence mechanic. I saw Kalandra. I saw Kalandra. You saw what I saw. I saw Kalandra's Lake. Why is Kalandra's Lake a new map? Okay. I like what I'm seeing. Okay. Very good. All right, with this, go back to the live stream.
can be encountered throughout the game. But there's also a new endgame map called the Asmiri Ranges, a mountain village where the Asmiri once lived, now overrun with corrupt monsters. This map always has multiple Asmirian wisps in it, and familiar, yet not quite the same boss fight. Asmirian wisps can also be further modified by the endgame Atlas tree as well, and by tablets. But I'm not going to be the one talking about those things. In order to cover all the new content in in-game, I'm going to hand things over to Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Roberts, Game Director on Path of Exile 2. There's a ton to talk about with the endgame today, so let's dig right in. Path of Exile 2's early access began with a brand new endgame, and it was clear that it needed a lot of work. After absorbing your feedback, we're ready to make some epic changes. The first thing is, we just need a lot more content.
Yeah.
In Dawn of the Hunt, we have made sure to focus on increasing the sheer number of interesting and different encounters you will randomly stumble into as you explore the endgame. And the second goal is to smoothen the progression through maps and reduce the amount of annoying busy work. To start with, let's talk about the new interesting stuff to find. Well, the most obvious thing to add are new maps. As well as the Azmeri ranges that Jonathan mentioned earlier, Dawn of the Hunt also contains 7 other new maps, all with their own custom encounters. Let's start with this one.
The Feral Megaliths map starts off in the wild Ezomite forests. As you progress through the forest, you will find mysterious rune-carved stones that, when touched, surge with energy. After activating all the stones, you can find a grand henge, where all the energy is coalescing. You can then start an encounter. The area darkens, a storm moves in, and a concentration of energy summons a dangerous boss. You must fight and defeat the boss to get its rewards. Once you have defeated it, summon another. And another. And another. And another. You have 10 total waves of boss fights which get incrementally more difficult.
Okay.
If you manage to defeat them, you get full boss rewards, but also opportunities to get new runes. These can only be obtained from this map. The Fractured Lake contains a surreal waterscape with fractured mirror-like objects.
I love it.
As you move around the map, the terrain itself elevates from below, creating
It's such
the ground
a gorgeous map, like visual.
In this unique map, all the rare monsters are mirrored, so you're always fighting 2 of the same rare at the same time, which can prove quite difficult. If you manage to overcome that challenge and make it to the end of the map, you'll be presented with a broken mirror, a powerful altar-like object that contains an item within it.
God damn!
The item contained within is a new base type, either an amulet or a ring, that can be crafted to have additional prefixes or suffixes at the cost of the other. The last unique map we'll show today is one
just
based
hanging
around
out
the
there.
essence mechanic. You enter a crystalline cavern, and you will find a powerful map boss imprisoned in the center. It is surrounded by many rare monsters, also imprisoned in essences. By freeing and defeating the rare monsters, the essence they held will be upgraded to a greater essence and be added to the imprisoned map boss. How brave
Is that
are you?
Rain of Arrows?
How many essences will you add to the boss? Overdo it, and you might lose everything. Underdo it, and you might regret it. It's your choice. Speaking of essences, alongside visual improvements,
I saw 6 map portals remaining.
Orbs to corrupt the essences with a range of unpredictable outcomes.
Nice. So no
It could
essence
increase the
corrupt.
number of essences, re-roll all the essences to the same type,
All right.
or even upgrade the essences to greater essences.
Nice.
What if they're already greater essences? Well, it can upgrade those too. We have 4 new corrupted essences. Essence of Hysteria, Delirium, Horror, and Insanity. Each corrupted essence has its own
All of them are like
combat
corrupted
mechanics.
related.
For example, the essence of Insanity causes you to question even your own mind, as monsters split into shadowy clones, and you must locate the real one before a devastating icy explosion freezes everything around it. Each of these has their own crafting outcomes.
So it's similar
the essence of Insanity
to
can be applied to a belt. It adds a
what
mod
is
that
one
will
of the
ensure
Shaper
next
Guardians, the
Valorb used
Chimera.
on the belt will guarantee adding 2 enchantments. It's worth noting all the essences in the unique map can also be corrupted too, if you're willing to risk it. It's worth noting we have also added 10 extra Atlas passive points you can earn by completing 5 different unique maps.
nice.
Now, new maps are just the beginning. We had a goal where we wanted to make sure you were constantly finding exciting new content, and that it could be lurking around any corner.
Rogue Exiles.
So, we have added a bunch of new things that you could stumble into in any map you run. On your travels, you will sometimes encounter rogue exiles. others like you who have been exiled and are openly hostile. Some are malicious, some are mad, while others are simply fiends for loot. They will challenge you, a fight to the death. They use the same skills available to players, and even the same items. They aren't just dressed up in those items, they're actually using them. It's going to feel like a true player versus player situation.
Okay. Hope
Of
the loot
course,
is
if
there.
you are able to slay these exiles, those items will all drop on the ground. So if you
Pausers.
encounter an exile using a powerful or valuable unique item, which you can see displayed under their life bar, you want to be damn sure you kill them. Because if they kill you and your party, they'll portal out, taking their items with them. Every fight will feel completely different depending on the items they come equipped with.
I
These
love
exiles
that.
are much smarter than your regular
How they don't
monster.
just like pop
They
out
have
of existence.
capabilities to dodge roll, avoid your abilities with smart pathfinding, smart targeting, and much more action-packed gameplay. Fortunately,
Nice.
they're like you and they're not super durable. Unless, of course, they're wearing uniques like Helm's Heart, in which case, expect a longer battle. There are 12 different rogue exiles you can find, each with their own skills and personalities.
Good number, 12, yeah.
Some may insult you, while others may admire your honor in combat.
Another encounter you might stumble onto in Dawn of the Hunt are one of 4 new unique strongboxes.
Strongboxes are chests with modifiers. When you try to open them, they activate traps and spawn waves of monsters that you must defeat to access the loot. Let's take a look at 2 of the new unique boxes that are harder to find and behave just a little bit differently. The
I love how
Oven's
they
Legacy Strongbox has a corpse splayed out in front of the rune-carved stone. Upon interacting with the stone, you activate Forbidden Ezomite magic, which revives the monster as a powerful rare. The Strongbox comes with a modifier which determines how many times it will revive that rare. Each time you defeat the monstrosity, the Strongbox revives it again, adding an extra modifier to the monster. With each resurrection, it becomes more difficult, but also more rewarding. This Strongbox is infused with thaumaturgy from ancient Vaal technology. Eshell's Torment has a powerful artifact inside, and is guarded by chaos itself. Defeating the monsters will grant you a unique
Jesus.
item with a specific corrupted outcome. You'll have to find the other 2 for yourself to see what they do.
Now, let's talk about the
Gamble
introduction
chest.
to the endgame.
Gamble
Upon
book.
starting the endgame, Doriani tasks you with cleansing corruption to help restore the land. However, in practice, the quest objective just sent you on a grind to clear 15 maps. We wanted to make the quest to unlock your Atlas passives much more interesting.
Now, Doriani is tasking you with a more specific objective. On the Atlas, you will find areas of corruption caused by the beast. In the center of each one, you will find a corrupted nexus, the source of the affliction. In the areas leading up to the nexus, you will notice that corruption spills out from slain enemies and amalgamates into powerful monsters. Corrupted maps existed on the Atlas before, but we've done significant work on improving these monsters. We've also done a full pass on the modifiers on these maps to make them more interesting and more rewarding.
So updated
Once you reach the Nexus, you'll have a new
Scourge
task.
mobs.
Cleanse the source of corruption. When you defeat the last rare in those maps, they will spawn one of 3 terrifying bosses.
Okay.
Amalgamations of corruption itself. After defeating that boss, Doriani will come and cleanse the corruption for good. As the remains of the boss are purged of corruption, it coalesces into raw crystallized power, which you can use to gain points for your Atlas passive skill tree. The upgrade system that allows you to add and enhance content in your maps. We didn't stop there though. When you complete a corrupted nexus, all
Wow.
of the remaining surrounding corrupted maps will become cleansed maps. Cleansed
Okay.
maps also have new monsters, a new boss, and their own set of modifiers and rewards,
Huh.
including finding fracturing orbs by slaying cleansed enemies.
Oh, holy.
These
Okay.
orbs can be used in crafting on a rare item to
Uh-huh.
cause one of its modifiers to become fractured. A
Jesus.
fractured modifier is one that cannot be modified by any means. You are able to freely modify the item, ensuring the fractured modifier will never change.
God
If you
damn.
get the right item with the right mod, it can prove to be a very powerful crafting base indeed. You must now choose. Do you complete all the corrupted maps and then the Nexus? Or maybe you beeline to the Nexus, complete it, and do all the remaining maps cleansed.
Okay.
Both have rewards to entice you and challenges to assess. Now, let's have a
We'll see how
talk
it plays
about
out.
towers. One thing we've had a lot of feedback on is the busy work around running towers and managing your tablets. The first change we've made here is that we have reduced the number of towers drastically. So there are now 1/3 as many as before, but we've made them much more powerful.
Nice. How?
To start with, tablets now inherently add twice as many mechanics. But that's
Fair.
not all. Running higher tier maps and towers now increases the number of mechanics applied by tablets. By tier 15, the bonus is double, allowing a single tablet to now add 4 times as many mechanics as before.
Okay.
So, we're running far fewer towers, dealing with fewer tablets, and affecting even more maps than before. But because there are fewer towers overlapping with each other, you won't get as many opportunities to stack different tablets. In order to solve this, we've made it so that each tower can consume up to 3 tablets at once.
Good.
You always get 1 slot on completing the tower, but if you can complete a tower with more mods on the waystone, you can unlock a 2nd or 3rd slot. Overall, this allows for even more juicing from towers, while
Good.
drastically reducing the amount of busy work you have to do.
Yes.
On top of that, towers are much more interesting maps because they can now spawn with all mechanics, including bosses. Each tower map has a new boss. Let's take a look at a couple here. The boss fight of the Alpine Ridge map has 2 powerful witches contesting for territory. One witch has an affinity for ice, the other fire. Who will win? Hopefully neither. The boss of the Sinking Spire map is a remnant of the Val that has been charged with lightning. It uses a full suite of lightning abilities. But be careful. If any of them hit the surrounding constructs, they will power up. Another thing that we've seen a lot of feedback about is sustaining waystones. As we looked into it, we realized that the people who couldn't sustain waystones were dying a lot. A lot more than we had expected. And that made us realize something. During the campaign, the expectation is that you can die multiple times in order to learn how to overcome challenges. You are able to learn how the monsters behave, adapt to their skills, and eventually overcome them. But as soon as you get to the end game, you're effectively no longer allowed to die if you want to sustain waystones. By the time you are getting towards the end of endgame, we want you to have to be careful not to die. But it certainly shouldn't be that we have such a sudden shift as you run your first maps.
Yep.
The first change we're making is you can now respawn and return to a map if you die. Continuing from where you left off. When you start the
Good.
endgame, you get up to 6 total attempts per map.
Nice.
As you add more modifiers to a waystone, the number of respawns goes down. This means that as you get to the point that you're running every waystone as a rare, you will have to be more careful.
Okay. That's fair.
In
Good.
parties, everyone gets to respawn that number of times. But we still think it's important that you can kill a boss in one go.
Yep.
In order to allow that to happen, we've made a change so that once you start the boss fight, it changes over to the same respawning system we use for pinnacle bosses. This means that the map owner can choose to respawn everyone at the same time. Another complaint we've seen a lot of is players not wanting to do the pinnacle content because of the experience penalty from dying. A change we've made here is that all pinnacle content now no longer grants experience, but also no longer removes experience on death either.
Okay.
Dawn of the Hunt also brings
Fair.
the first batch of Twilight Order reliquary keys from the early access supporter packs. These keys contain items selected by our supporters. They can contain any unique item found in Path of Exile 2.
Yo! Crude bow.
If the
No
selected item is a pinnacle
Pepicarol.
boss drop, then only special keys dropped by this content will be able to provide these items. For example,
the
Hand of
message
Wisdom in
is good.
action can only come from a key dropped by Zesht. We're also making a change
Nice.
that allows pinnacle boss uniques to drop at any difficulty. Rarer uniques will be rarer at lower difficulties, but still possible to find. This applies to the drop chances for the reliquary keys from this content as well. We spoke about towers and tablets earlier, But we have also added a suite of unique tablets. Each of these adds crazy interactions to the maps influenced by it. For example, this unique tablet allows you to run any map in a tower's radius without requiring connections, which can be quite useful for jumping gaps and traveling around your atlas.
What?
And this tablet causes all runic monsters spawned during expedition encounters
does
to
that
be
work?
duplicated, and weakens all expedition monsters that emerge from the ground. The Atlas tree has also
Duplicated?
been expanded, and you can
Jeez.
find many of the new mechanics there.
Okay,
And
Exalt.
improvements to existing ones too.
Instances, yep. Starting to fill
Now,
out.
through this
Hi,
live stream,
Shaggy.
we have mentioned quite a few new crafting options that we've added. New runes, corrupted essences, fractured mods, and jewelry crafting bases. But we did have just one more crafting system to talk about. Recombination.
Expedition was the only in-game mechanic that was lacking a crafting system, so that needed to change. Recombination is a mechanic that might be familiar to some players.
Yep,
It
I hate
allows
it.
you to merge two items together, hoping to get the best elements
I have
of
to make
each
the
on a
video why
single new
recombination
item.
is bad.
This new crafting bench will be unlocked as you complete your first expedition, and requires artifacts found
Oh,
during
sorry.
expeditions
Sorry,
to
Shaggy.
fuel it.
Yeah, I just went
The
on and,
rarer
you
the
know,
mods on the item you
there
are
was no time.
combining, the more expensive the cost.
every
That wraps
minute
up
counts.
all the major in-game changes we're talking about today. With all the system changes and new content, we can't wait to get in there, start blasting maps, and obliterating monsters. There is one more thing we wanted to clarify before we move on, which is that all the content we've talked about today will be made available in the existing early access leagues, so you can play your existing characters.
Nice.
However, there will be
Okay.
new leagues made for those who wish to start in a fresh economy. It is recommended to start over and get the full new experience in the Dawn of the Hunt leagues.
Okay.
For all our existing early access
Wait,
players,
we knew that
we're
though,
really
right?
looking
So the
forward to
characters
joining
stay.
you playing in this new update. For those who don't already have access and are interested in playing Path of Exile 2, Dawn of the Hunt, you are able to at any time purchase an early access supporter pack at www.pathofexile2.com. Additionally, the Paladin and Penance supporter packs are now available to purchase in Path of Exile 2 and contain 6 microtransactions each and the full pack's face value in points. All the microtransactions contained within these packs are purely cosmetic and do not affect your character's power or progression in any way.
Oh, are they
Thank
running
you
the
so much for
same
your ongoing support.
thing again?
We're just about to start the Q&A with Ziggy D. With release at the end of next week, our community team will be posting crucial information you'll need for the release. Keep an eye on the news. On
Nice.
release weekend, we expect to launch the new mystery box and many new microtransactions, including Path of Exile 2's first alternate skill effects. Thanks for joining us today and checking out our
Alternate
latest
skill.
developments. We're looking forward to playing the Huntress, trying new builds, and exploring the new endgame next week. We'll begin the Q&A shortly, so please get your questions ready.
I like that ending actually. I really enjoyed that ending speech kind of from him, because it was very much like real, as in, you know, it's gonna be new stuff to explore. We're gonna jump back in and blast. So
Good morning, Exiles, and welcome to the Q&A
What?
portion of today after a very exciting reveal with lots and lots in it, exceeding my expectations, particularly in crafting. But on that note, we're joined here by Jonathan and Mark to talk about all that we've seen today and more in the future of Path of Exile 2. And you had an update about the recombination.
volume.
Yes, that's
first,
right.
though.
That's right. Yeah, so we actually last night had a bit of a design session and realized that we weren't actually fully happy with the way that recombination worked. So we actually made quite a big change to it, which wasn't reflected in that video, obviously, which is basically that we sort of wanted to...
It's
give
probably
a
gonna
bit
be
more
fixed in a
control
second.
to the player over how recombination works. And we also kind of weren't really happy about the fact that recombinators is something that like kind of matters a lot for really, really ultra endgame players. But it wasn't something that was really mattering a lot for like the people who effectively got access to the feature at the start. So we've actually changed it now so that the way it works is that you pick which mods you want on the each item from each item, and then it gives you a percentage chance of success based on the number you pick. So if you pick just like one from one and one from the other, then the chance is much higher. But if you pick if you pick 6 mods, it'll become practically impossible. So effectively, like the more you're wanting to design the item, the less of a chance of actually having success. So that means that if you just want to get like a mod, if you want to get an item with like, okay, these 2 mods that I found off the ground, that's relatively easy. If you want to get an item which has all of them, then very hard. So we think that's a much better design because it means you can kind of use the recombinators actually become something that you can use even from from the first point you get them. But there's still this kind of end game, like for perfect stuff, you might still be able to do it with more. It is kind of balanced though, so that like if you pick literally all 6, then it's going to be like incredibly low to the point of like don't even try that. But like 4 mods might be a good thing to sort of be striving for, that kind of thing, and then exalt the other 2, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the new
I'm not a
design
fan of
that.
recombinators
So
for a
hopefully that'll
variety
be
of
in
reasons.
By the time Zero Two
I have
comes
to
out,
make
we're
that video
we've
why
got a
I
plan of
personally
doing
do not enjoy that
yeah,
mechanic.
I think
But
it's
I
a much better
understand
design
why
than
it's
what we
good.
had before for
And why it should be in the
If
game.
it's not there for O2O, it'll be.
Yeah,
this
as
makes
soon
it
as
even
can
better for the
afterwards,
people that
but,
enjoy it.
Yeah,
good.
spur of the moment, night before the live stream design sessions,
Yeah.
but
Been a few of those.
increased player agency and visibility into the success result is just a win. And honestly, took way too long to, get to the point of us actually going, this is.
Oh, now it's too
just
low
straight
again,
up
right?
better
Wait.
to have observability into that and the freedom of choice. So.
Sure.
This is good.
Yeah, that's the thing. Recombination definitely felt like something that was both really high end in terms of the crafting that it was intended for, but also just even understanding it. This seems much more intuitive because
You just pick what you
selecting
want.
the mods you want.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
So
Yeah.
it does sound like it's a little bit of a nerf for the very high end of crafting, though. Like,
It might end up being, but I'm not it sort of depends on how the numbers come out. Because we only just designed this, we need to still work out like exactly how the numbers end up looking. But I mean, look, we have to make sure. Obviously, whenever we're designing any crafting system, we have to be really sure that we're not like screwing over finding stuff on the ground. So you have to sort of have that balance, and that's so that kind of informs everything we do with crafting usually.
One difference here, though, of course, is if the success chance fails, both
item's just
both
deleted,
items
yeah.
are destroyed as opposed to always keeping one.
Yeah.
So
okay.
So it's basically
Whether or not
percent chance for success, and if it fails, item's gone. So
Roughly, what do you
Fair.
think you try to pitch just choosing 2 mods at? Like,
It depends on what mods you're selecting, but I'm kind of thinking kind of like 35%-ish kind of thing for like 2 normal mods, that kind of thing.
them both to
Like for them
go
both,
over?
for them both. For if you pick 2,
Yeah.
and then but we'll
it
see.
kind of depends. Again,
It kind of depends. We'll see how we
higher,
have to do
higher
some
tier
mathing.
mods are rare, and
Yeah, exactly. So it sort of
it
depends on the
also
situation.
the other thing is it's going to now have a fixed cost, so it's not gonna
Yeah.
you know
And the idea is
dollar
like
based on
and the idea is like doing a single expedition should be enough to do a recombination. So you're going to be doing them like relatively often as you're doing expeditions.
so is the part of Expedition where you get to craft with the NPCs still a thing then? Now that you're adding this?
Yeah, I mean you've still got that whole mechanic, and like so it's competing for the artifacts.
Yeah.
Between recombination versus buying things from that other way.
So is there some buffs intended for that then to make it more competitive?
not
with...
yet. It definitely needs some love in the future, but not at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like the systems can kind of go hand in hand, where one is giving you items that you can then potentially recombinate.
That is also true. You can use the ingredients of one in the other, or the outcome of one as an ingredient in another,
Cool. We'll talk more about crafting a little bit later on for sure, because there was a lot announced there, which I'm quite excited about. Definitely exceeded my predictions for what you'd be adding in terms of crafting. But firstly, though, just a quick clarification on the league. So there's not going to be a wipe for the new players joining us. If you were playing on a character, you can still keep playing on a character.
Louder?
But a lot of long-term Path of Exile players know the importance of playing on a fresh start. And that's also really important for you guys as well,
For sure, yeah. I mean, basically, if we don't have like any character that's come from before, you're just not gonna because the balance is so different and because so many things have changed. There's like no point in even listening to feedback for someone who's playing in the old league. Like it really has to be that you're doing the fresh start, and we're sort of seeing how things go in the new economy. So like we were really sort of it was kind of an interesting decision about whether or not we should make it so that all the content is exclusive, or rather like what amount of content would be exclusive to the league versus not. And the issue that we had is that so I mean like a league means something in Path of Exile. In order for something to rise to the level of a league, it needs like a certain amount of features. And the original thing we were thinking about doing that way would be the Asmeri Wisps, but there wasn't quite like the kind of like meta mechanics and stuff with that. So like we didn't quite rise to the level of feeling like it deserved to be a challenge league. And at the same time, we've also got a lot of new players playing Path of Exile 2 who never played Path of Exile before. So we were a little bit like we kind of were deciding like, okay, should we should we make them exclusive or not? We sort of decided, you know what, for this one we're not going to. And then what we'll probably try and do is for the next league that we do, we'll actually make it a proper challenge league with like its own exclusive mechanic and so on. But yeah, it's a little bit funny because like in early access is a bit of a different situation, different, and so. Yeah, we'll sort of see how this goes anyway. But certainly I would encourage everyone just like
There's
starting
so
in on a
much
new
to do.
character,
It's
I think,
fine.
you'll have a much better time because obviously if there's structural changes to the passive tree. It's like if you log in with your card, you're going to have like your tree's going to get reset. You have to do stuff. There's things like that are going to happen that mean that and also just balance changes, right? Like huge numbers of them. So
I missed like
you're gonna
the
have a
first
better time
15
playing from the
minutes.
start.
Were there any skill
That's
tree
it.
changes?
And speaking of the Huntress, then, so we saw our initial Huntress quite some time ago now, and had some
Just for
hands-on
context.
time.
I'm
with
gonna
other
watch
things,
the video
but I certainly
offline
having played
tomorrow
that before
again.
and played it now recently. The Huntress has changed quite a lot.
Yeah.
So, what was the how hard was it to get it ready for release? What was kind of the key there?
Okay, got
I
it.
mean, it's funny because class design is one of those things where every
So
time
maybe they
you
just moved
add something,
stuff
it
around,
can
you
make
know?
you reevaluate everything else, which is why it's so hard to predict
Yes.
like how long a class will take. So like it changed a lot since the last time we had we were showing Huntress. And honestly, like, it's like while there are some skills that you will still see, like it just plays completely different. And I mean, whenever we're looking in like how we're going to design something like this, it really comes down to like what is it's the special about the character class? Like how can we double down on that to make sure it feels different? So with the Huntress, you've obviously got spears as a base type. The key difference between a spear and any other weapon type is that you can both use them at melee and you can also use them at range. You can throw them. And so because of that, we really were just really trying to incentivize everything possible so that you use both of those things. And, action RPG players, they generally speaking, the balance can often be such that you only really want to do one thing and do that one thing well. So trying to incentivize the kind of ranged and melee is,
that's why I love PoE 1.
And I mean, the way we do it effectively is try to make sure
Do
that
one
like,
thing
there are
and make
combo
it
chains
busted
where,
as fuck.
a ranged thing can combo with something that's melee, and a melee thing can combo with something that's ranged, and then also give you good abilities to move between the two states. And so that kind of means that you end up with a very like agile character, like you're constantly moving like backwards and forwards and kind of moving around. And I would say that like given that it's the Dex character, that it's good that it feels that way. That
The
it kind of
trailer?
feels
Yeah, I
the
watched
most
it
agile of
right
all
when
the
I
melee
started
character
to stream.
classes.
Thanks.
That's been a
the
really good
content
one.
reveal. Nice.
But I mean, look, there are. In terms of changes, I mean, look, there are just changes all the time. Like the frenzy charge thing was like relatively late in development. Like there's like quite a lot of things going on that just meant that the field kept on evolving. And another big one, of course, was parry, which I honestly was very skeptical of working. And Mark, Mark was the one who saved it. Honestly, like I was like, you know what? There was like 3 times I think where I was like, you know what? I don't think it's gonna work. And then you were like, okay, I think we're gonna save this.
I was like, give me a week.
Yeah, exactly. And it works completely differently for most games, because in most games, obviously, with parrying, the way that works is that you have to time the like to push the block button at exactly the right time. But that's just something
I
that
hate
just
that.
wouldn't work in our combat system because you're often packs of monsters. It's just like you don't really have the ability to read combat in that way in our game.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we need to
It
make
makes
something
sense in
where
a
there's gonna be,
third-person game,
like,
not in an
if a
ARPG
single
where you're
monster in a
far
pack
away.
hits you need to be able to respond to that with something that's gonna you need to be able to respond in a way where you don't just then immediately get hit by a bunch of other stuff.
Yes.
So having it so that the parry, like it always parries, but it's then taking advantage of what the parry does to the monster by following up with something that's going to give you like an explosion or something like that to kind of deal with the pack. That's something that sort of allows that counter gameplay to work in our game. So you've kind of got 2 primary parry follow-ups. You've got the frenzy charge one, which dashes back, which means that you don't have to worry about the monsters hitting you. And then you've also got the one that there's another one which I don't believe we showed there, which called Fangs of Frost, which does a counter where you attack with ice, which freezes the pack. So it's another way to so in both cases, you've kind of got something that's kind of dealing with the fact that you've got all these monsters around you. And that was kind of the biggest challenge I think that we had with that mechanic. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll also make note of there was a support gem I found that you can attach to any attack that allows you to follow up parry to generate a frenzy charge too. So it doesn't even
Right.
have to be the backflip.
Yeah,
You
in
can
that case. Yeah, there's other...
create your own parry.
Yep, and then
follow-ups.
of course there's always Sniper's Mark, and there's there's a skill that does give you a guaranteed crit, so that's a potential option as well. Like you've got a few different ways to generate them.
Because parry guarantees a light stun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You always get that small window to actually engage or do a thing before before you're under danger again.
And I'll tell you this, like, I am one of those players who never parry, right? In any game ever, because I can never do it. It's always just so frustrating. So
Based.
I was very skeptical of that, but it feels really good. You've
Awesome.
both managed to make it something that's easy to do because you can just hold the button down and
Yeah.
parry at any time. There's no skill involved in that. But at the same time, you've incentivized making it so that you do want to still try and time it as best you can personally by well, how have you done that? How have you made it so that like you actually still want to kind of play it skillfully?
Well, I mean, ultimately, anytime you're holding down the parry button is when you're not attacking, right? So you still
Exactly.
want to kind of
Please no
minimize
more
the
ads.
window, but at the same time, like the timing is just not like, not as bad. But the nice thing as well is that like once you do successfully parry, it's very obvious. You get the sound, you get the token on the
chunky.
monster. It's very chunky.
Yeah.
So it means it's very obvious when you're supposed to counterattack. So yeah, I'm very happy with that. I think that it came out really well.
Actually,
And
I
honestly,
never
one of the funny things
understood
about it is that it immediately
the sound
made me
effect of
realize like how
the
bad
boss is gonna kill you
shields
with this
are in
upcoming
comparison,
attack.
which is
I
why we're
never
also trying to
understood
ninja
that sound.
in a
Never.
change to how shields
In
work
my
at the last minute.
entire
which we'll
playthrough.
See if it makes it into 020. I was playing around
That
with it
sound
last
just
night.
does not work
This
for
was
my
8
brain.
p.m. last
Yeah,
night.
yeah, 8
at
p.m. last
Jonathan's
night, exactly.
just
I was
messing with this.
Yeah, messing around with it, and I won't talk too much about how that's going to work, but effectively we want to make shields, the shields better as well, and kind of build something into those to make them more interesting. So that's the plan there. We'll see if it makes it for 020.
Yeah, following that kind of similar design space idea of being able to do a bit more with it.
Yeah,
And then that
100%.
feed into other skills and things like that as well.
100%.
There's a lot of room there to play with.
Yeah.
So we talked about Huntress being very, very combo heavy, and she has the deepest combo chains out of anyone so far, even exceeding like things you can do with Monk.
True.
You got 3-4 different skills deep of things you can start to synergize together. So how do you balance? How do you make that fun? Firstly, like rather than like onerous, for example.
Well, I mean, I guess there's a few things. Like one of them is it just has to be very readable and understandable when, like what you can do and when you can do it. And I think the other thing that's really to our advantage here is reusing skills in multiple ways, so you can make a deeper combo chain without requiring you to be using as many skills in order to do it. So the way that Whirling Slash and Tornadoes interact with ground effects and kind of like all that stuff sort of means that you're using Whirling Slash multiple times as part of the same combo chain. And that's an idea I think that I'd like to try and explore more, because I think that it is a cool way to kind of extend the combo chain. Yeah, as I said, without sort of getting too many things involved, and makes it a lot cooler. So yeah, I'll think a bit more about how we can apply that to other classes and other skills. But it's worked out really well here.
Yeah, it's a bit of like a loose create your own combo system in a way. Like obviously there's intended combos, but because it's interacting with something that's fundamental like ground effects, you're able to combo with anything that creates a ground effect. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Like I added shocked ground to the backflip skill, or I got a companion pet that had a shocked ground aura.
Nice.
As like that was just there and that was available all the time.
I mean, it's funny as well because it also works on just enemy ground effects, and so sometimes you can just get a damage boost because the rare just happen to be dropping ground fire or something. So that's kind of fun.
It's kinda nice.
It's been it's just a lot of fun to play. The first time I ran into that was actually in the graveyard where there's these like chests that like pop open with fire, and like I was using tornadoes, and then one of them just randomly turned into a fire tornado, and I'm like, oh, what happened there? Oh, yeah, sweet. It was just like a really cool moment where it just sort of interacted with the environment, which was really fun.
It always feels like you're getting a little bit of something extra for free when you're taking advantage of the enemy effects, or a boss fight that just has burning ground everywhere. It's like sweet. So how do you go about balancing though when you have a class that has deeper combos and kind of somewhat requires you to do a bit more versus a class or a skill or a build that is just bonk?
I mean, you have to ultimately make the combos matter, right? And I think actually that's one of those things that we're trying to really focus on with the balance changes we're doing in Dawn of the Hunt more generally, is making sure that even, like, I think it's the case where some of the combo gameplay kind of degenerates a little bit by end game in a way that, like, I want to make sure it still feels rewarded. And so we were sort of doing various checks, recently about, like as a random example, right? Like, so on the Mercenary, we found that doing, but when you get to endgame, doing armor break, what's it called? The armor piercing that causes armor break, followed with high velocity rounds, is just worse than just using high velocity rounds. and that's like really bad, right? Like we have
Yep.
to make sure that we're improving that stuff. So it's like
Oh.
sometimes you just get these things where like the balance by endgame
Yeah.
kind of degenerates in a way that, that doesn't support the combo anymore, and so we have to make sure that when we're looking at buffing things, that we're like making sure that
The
when we're doing
crossbow
it, it's
felt
to support
weird.
the fact that using more things is actually a good thing.
Yeah, that definitely doesn't
yeah, we're
work
really
with
trying to make sure that we're
mercenary.
bringing some of that,
In-
improving some of that stuff
as the normal
as well
player,
as we're
at
making the
least.
balance changes.
So do you have like a baseline there of where like the really simplest build should be, the build that just bonks? Like,
I mean, you mean in terms of damage or in terms of like what it does? You know, I mean, we always want
I
you
guess
to be able to build that way,
the
but
players have to do a combo.
I mean,
like, for
no,
people who don't want
ultimately
to.
you never have to, right? But it
Yeah.
sort of what it means is that you know, you are sacrificing something. And look, the
Yeah.
ideal situation is that like you don't feel like you have to do combos, you feel like you want to do combos,
Yes.
right? Like, because you feel rewarded for them. It's like should
That's
feel
it.
like a fun, like, oh, I can add this, you know, like it's the feeling you should be getting.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think the Huntress is doing that very well. Must have been like extremely hard because I don't think I've ever seen this like ranged melee combo done well before.
Right. Well, I mean, it does require a lot of discipline, and it means that a lot of skills like end up on the cutting room floor because you try them out and then you realize, well, if this is in the game, then that's the only thing I'm ever going to do. So you got to be really careful about that stuff. For
Certainly playing the Huntress now makes me go back and look at the other classes and be
Yes.
like, we need to up that
Yeah.
the level there, and we missed the
Yeah,
mark a little bit now because this is better. And
Right.
who's to say the next class won't even be better and make us question even this? But
Sure.
you know,
But that's the way it is with class design.
that's
It's
what he
just
says when
always-
we like
Yeah.
literally when you make a new class, you question everything. He's
Right,
not
right.
understating the
Yeah,
level
yeah,
of
yeah.
questioning everything.
Yeah. Do you see like going back to the monk at some point and looking for more like opportunities to link skills together with?
I mean,
combos
we
and
haven't got to the full skill set for any class yet already,
Yes,
and we need
true.
to add more pieces for
Because
a lot.
I think there's at least 4 skills that were designed and then aren't in the monk currently. Just
Yep,
you know,
range are the same.
Yeah,
There was
yeah.
extra poison skills. It was intended to be more chaos dots. There's all kinds of stuff. We have to obviously at some point fill all of that in. Hard to say when, but we're going to try and incrementally get it, like much like how Ray Spectre and I mean the mount works with the Huntress, but we were like, let's give something for the Ranger this time. Let's give something for the summoners out there this time, and so we're just going to keep filling in those gaps over time.
Yeah.
And it feels
Bit
like
by
you're
bit.
getting better at class and skill design as you go too. So I imagine the last class you're going to release is going to be like amazing. You'll look back at the first ones and be like, ooh.
possibly.
Well, that is that worry, but whatever. That
But look, that just means we've got another round of going through everything and improving
Yeah.
stuff again, right? So
and that will never end.
That's it. So with the parry came the kind of looking at the player getting stunned, in particular player heavy stun. So
Yep.
it's always hard to tell players like, hey, we're going to do something to you and it's going to be a bad thing. You're not going to like this.
Well, the funny
So
thing,
let's talk about why.
there's a few things like that actually, because so I mean, for a start, like we needed the downside of parry to be you know, like that, yeah, you get stunned out of it. But then when we're looking at how long, like we're like, okay, right now, even, and it's this true with shield block as well, by the way. It's like if you get stunned out of that, the amount of time that you get stunned out for is actually not even enough time for most bosses to do a follow-up attack on you. And it's like, well, where's the downside if it doesn't even have enough time? So we did have to extend that out a little bit,
Yeah.
and it makes you a little bit more careful. But in just to warn people, right? There's a few other things like we lowered what's it called, the I can't remember the name of that thing now. The thing that makes you more easy to be elemental statuses apply to you. Ailment threshold. That's right, ailment threshold. Yeah. So we lowered ailment threshold to actually make it so the player has those mechanics happen more to them, right? Because like right now through campaign, like you barely get frozen or burning or shocked, really, to be honest. So there's stuff like that we've had to do to kind of make sure that you know, that because if you don't have that stuff actually happen to you, then there's no point in mitigating it. And it's like, you know, things like charms were like not very useful because, you know, those mechanics weren't happening to you. There's stuff like that, right? The downsides do
I
actually
mean, at
matter
the
in order
beginning,
to
we
make it
didn't
so
even
that,
know if
you
a charm
that
was active.
then, you know, there's other things you can do to sort of bypass those downsides. So
But,
yeah, that's
yeah.
kind of one of those things that, you know, we just have to make sure is there.
It's
I did always
balanced.
find it a little bit strange that like was able to count the number of times I was frozen in the campaign on one finger.
For sure. For sure. For sure. But
And
yes,
it's always by those vile ghosts.
yes.
So
Right.
expect a little bit more, a little bit more danger.
Pretty much
from
the
stun. I
first
definitely got a
boss
couple
after
times
the
getting
first
heavy stun.
town.
Yeah, it can
So
happen.
that's mostly occurring
And
if you're
those
like
wild
doing
ghosts.
bad blocking or parrying, but
Yeah.
can it also
They're
occur
rough.
just from like taking a really big hit or something?
Not- at least we've discussed that. We've gone through a whole bunch of different, like, should certain boss abilities heavy stun you, and if you speak into enough stun threshold, it like demotes it to a light stun, and if that, you know, there's all kinds of
mere multi-hour discussions we've had, and we haven't really come to anything conclusive there. But it's only from mount, raise shield, and parry, and of which, at least for all of them, you can see your stagger bar filling up. It's worth noting things like evasion apply to. So when you're parrying, we turn off your evasion from taking damage because the block does, right? And otherwise you'd be like, I'm going to parry it. Oh, I evaded it. It didn't parry. Yeah. But you can evade the stagger build-up, so you don't take the damage anyway, just before anyone misunderstands that.
The evasion still works.
Yeah.
So high evasion will mean you can parry for longer. There's a bunch of parry stuff on the tree, including damage affecting the debuff, the duration of the debuff, so you get to benefit for it longer. Reducing stagger is all over the place for both mount and so in the dex section of the tree. So yeah, you can mitigate. I mean, my expectation is probably you'll get some in-game builds that are just like, I can parry forever and there's no real consequence. So not every skill can be parried, of course.
Like a super end-game build.
The slam rules. If it's a slam
parry
from
24/7,
you can't parry it. Much to your frustration for some things.
I mean, there are a few things where I've got disagreements about what looks like it's parryable, but
my hopeful there was when it's contentious, people would bring it up and would change it, right?
Sure.
So like, if it's on the line, it's meant to be blockable. Like, if it isn't clear, and there was no way with hundreds of monsters and many dozens of bosses that we weren't going to miss some things.
So you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but action RPGs kind of naturally pull you towards one damage type, one skill, one specific thing, and optimizing as much as possible, because otherwise you're just making a bad build a lot of the time. But I notice Huntress has a bit of everything. She's got bleed, she's got all the elements, she's got physical. The only thing she doesn't have is like chaos, but there's kind of poison on the tree right there. So how do you like promote this, like all of this different stuff together? Are you supposed to only kind of be relegated to using 2 or 3 skills, or are these supposed to come together, and how do you manage that?
Well, there's a few things. So one of them is that we provide a lot of combos with the expectation that you'll probably be focusing around like a few specific things rather than necessarily using the whole tree. So like there's that. The other thing as well is just making sure that in the passive tree there's sort of options that go across both. So the Huntress's passive tree has quite a lot of things like extra melee damage if you've done a ranged attack recently, and then it's got things like bonuses against blinded enemies, because while you're in a whirling slash there's so it's sort of stuff like that where we're trying to carefully think like, well, how can we come up with something that's interesting and
so conditional stuff
that you might want
to makes sense with
that
her
synergizes with the stuff that that Huntress can do. But it is honestly hard because like many categories of things only matter for one thing, part of a combo. So it's just like trying to come up with categories that can somehow span all of them in different ways. And ideally we can achieve that, but yeah, it is pretty hard.
Generally, you're going to become more niche or more selective because, again, even mixing elemental and bleed is just probably often going to result.
You
in
probably wouldn't do both elemental and bleed. You'd probably choose one or the other. But that's why we kind of try to make sure that, like, so you've got sort of linkages between them though, right? Because it's like, for example, the thunderous leap detonates the spears that you do from the bleed thing. So it's like kind of like the idea there is to like it changes how that skill then has a use in the combo with the other one. So even if that skill itself isn't doing a lot of damage, it's triggering something that's taking advantage of all the damage bonuses you got for the for your bleed stuff. So that's kind of like the idea is just to link all that stuff in a bit so that you can use the
actually I haven't played bleed at all.
Like directly synergistic things in a kind of more synergistic way.
Might need to try that out if there's a good build.
You didn't see that from the earlier trailer.
Around.
You spear them with a bunch of spears and then jump on them and explodes them for bleed. Amazing. So, but yeah, that's using an elemental skill like in another way as a detonator. But and even more, you've got weapon swaps as well.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's all those systems we already added about all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I mean, like, what will be interesting is whether or not we miss something cross-class, right? That's always a concern. Is someone will come up with some way to abuse something, between something that's going on in the spear skills with some other class that we failed to consider.
Yeah, I mean, so that's it. When we look at a new class, we typically like call it like, Huntress is spears, but kind of not really. It's a signature weapon, but
absolutely
nothing in the Ascendancy's prescribes spears.
Exactly. So effectively, we take great pains to make sure that the Ascendancies never mention weapon types, that there's like that they're always generalized. So, for example, the like infusion mechanic in the Amazon, it just says projectiles, it doesn't say spears, and the reason it does that is so that you could make an Amazon who is a bow user, and that's all fine. So like it's effectively like
open-ended.
It's open-ended, and honestly, like I know that Mark does like. It makes the constraint a lot harder for how to design an Ascendancy class when you have to think about it that way, for sure.
Oh, it'd be much, much easier to just put a bunch of cool spear stuff in there. But now only really. I mean, it was similar to the original PoE 1 Saboteur. It called out traps and mines, and so if
Yeah.
you're a trap and mine character, what are you doing? Well, that
Yeah.
you could do something else, but no one else is playing that thing. You know,
Right.
it isn't. It is easier to design. It is certainly less flexible and open as to what people can play in the different combinations and all that. So yeah.
How much do you have to
Dude,
consider
how will they
the
do
different
a-
weapons and the skills and how they interact together when you're originally designing them, or is there just literally so
Build
many possible
them.
combinations? You're just like, the
Like the-
players will take care of that for us.
I mean, I
Trap
think it is
and
relatively
mine
impossible to come up with
ascendancy.
everything, but certainly we have to consider, like, you know, is this going to be broken with anything else in particular? And there just has to be certain rules for things about, like, you know, how easy is it to apply this debuff, how easy it is to consume this debuff, and even then, it's like, you know, we often make mistakes and have issues. You know, I mean,
When he says relatively impossible, it is actually impossible.
Actually,
but you know, I mean, yeah, I mean,
That's
just
relative.
but even just looking at the balance pass we're doing at the moment, right? I mean, there's hundreds of things like that, you know, that we still. I mean, there's things that we could never honestly understand all of the different broken things that could possibly exist, and so it's like it really does depend a lot on you know, like on seeing reports and what people are doing on some level, right? But then I think that what will happen over time is obviously, like, you know, the game's
Dude,
still
they're just
relatively
stream
new.
sniping
We're still making
jungle, you
relatively
know?
big changes. Over time, the balance, I think, will get to the point where we no longer have these like crazy outliers.
They have
to the
one
certain
guy
extent.
watching a stream all day and then just writing
should mean
notes.
that
It's
we
like,
get to
all
some
right,
sort
this
of
skill,
relative class
busted.
parity. By
Just
parity,
nerf
what I
it.
mean is, like, you know,
Fast.
people playing
Fix it.
all the different classes.
We gotta get
rather
this
than
next
focusing
patch.
only on a few as we get towards full release, because, you know, right now it's obviously very skewed because, you know, there's certain broken things. So you know, yeah, the balance over time we'll get there.
It's one of the main goals and benefits of the early access is just like,
I mean,
let's
if
get
you
the balance of
randomly
characters
stumble
right.
into a broken build
And,
day one,
yeah,
that's a
this
thing
patch,
fine.
Oh,
I think
release was
that's
always going to
good.
have
That
1,000
should
problems,
be
or probably
possible.
10,000 problems, you know? The next one will have
But it
half that, the
shouldn't
next one
be
half that, and probably eventually it's going to
common,
be down
right?
to, like, here's only a few things going, you
Like
know,
1 out of
out of whack.
100,000
There's always gonna be
players or
something,
10,000
because we add too
stumbles
much
into a
content
super
for it
broken
to
build.
even be controlled.
Good job.
Like,
Yeah.
again, there are too many uniques, too many supports, too many skills, and too many other changes for any amount of people. Like, you're talking about a matter of you'd have to put in, like, thousands and thousands of hours internally to find it, and then you give it to the players. There's so many people, it's going to take literally 5 minutes. So it is. It's very beneficial. And we're lucky in that regard that we get to that level of testing and feedback, and on such a mass level, and especially, you know, with things like, you know, Ninja and all of that, and other people being able to see it and discuss it more openly, we're just going to be able to iterate on it even faster. But yeah, every single patch you're going to see a pretty substantial change in what's going to happen here. Yeah.
Thanks for making the broken builds. And
Well,
players.
100%.
I mean, you mentioned support gems. It's like over 100 support gems added just this patch. It's it's already like so many, and with you doing a different weapon for each of the 16 classes.
Yeah, I
and
mean, there's going to be a lot
16
by the time we're
weapons,
done. But there kind of has
it's
to be,
all-
right? Because
I know, that's what you made it. You made this system that you need so many supports to support.
You
because
do.
otherwise it's not going to work. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
especially with this one support system, it's like, what have you guys done?
Well, I mean, look, this is why we have recommendations, and hopefully we can improve those as well, and continue to get that better. You know, like
There's certainly room for the complexity to get a little bit out of control here. So the recommendeds are going to become more and more important.
Right.
So we need to make sure those are very much right.
for sure.
You must be looking to players even to find some of those recommendations down the line as well.
In some
like what-
cases,
yeah,
in some cases.
what stuff is popularly getting
But
used.
the thing with the recommendations though is that they can't really take into account what you've already got on the gem. So the recommendations have to be just sort of generally good, but not really take into account combos. You know, that kind of means they're a bit more simple. Like, the recommendations are going to be more simple than what you'd otherwise be doing if you're
Yeah.
Like, feels like at some point you're going to need some sort of nested recommendation system. It's like, well, I'm kind of doing bleed stuff, so you go to the sub menu for bleed recommendations.
I'm less certain about that because I kind of don't want to get into the thing of actually telling you what your build should be. Yeah, that's a little different, bit different there.
Maybe like more sorting methods for the show me all the gems. Oh, there's a lot that are only in there that are never recommended, right? At this point,
There are, yes, there are.
It's going to be an interesting challenge you guys have set yourselves to make enough supports there. So another thing that you managed to challenge that you set yourselves, and I always wonder, like, why did you do this to yourselves, was Spectres. So originally those were planned to be in for launch, but obviously Spectres are a whole can of worms. It's, hey, let's just give players access to every monster. Also, we've made so many new monsters.
Yeah.
We're talking about all the broken. There's going to be some broken in there, I promise you. And there's going to be some stuff we have to change.
I mean, they've done, but I mean, effectively, what the time between early access and this was like, okay, let's actually attempt at least to do a balance pass of this and like see if there's anything that's going to be a problem and then adjust numbers.
but now
One
you gotta
guy had to
count
look
all those
over
support teams on all those
every
monsters.
enemy.
Yes, well, this is a
That
interesting
poor
thing,
one
isn't
dude.
it? The support teams work. The support teams work on them.
Give him a raise, or
And,
I don't
you know,
know,
like what the hell's that going to do?
a good steak dinner.
Yeah, like it's impossible to completely know, but yeah, like look, I mean, there's probably definitely some some dark secrets lying in what kind of Spectre mixed with support gems are going to do.
And monsters have skills now. It's not like PoE 1 where it's
Exactly.
like just a bunch of zombies just doing default
Bro,
attacks.
Gas is
It's
gonna
like
bust
everything
a nut.
pretty much has a skill now. At this
And
point,
the
so-
Spectre's gonna come
yeah,
out.
the
And
great
he's like,
thing
all
about
right,
it is
let's
we got
multiple
to leverage
projectile
that
all
work
of these.
again for the beast
And then
taming
some
as well.
weird-
So and of course
I
the
don't know,
difference
like,
there is that you also get the mods from the
way
thing
to like
that we
freeze
tamed.
enemies with the
So,
multiple
you know, that's
barrage, and
gonna
then you have
be,
like
or is ground
overlapping
effects.
shotgunning
exactly.
effects on some
Yep,
mobs.
yep,
So
yep,
just like
No, you've got a whole nother ruckus of
just
potential
insta-freeze every
interactions.
mob.
So
every
you know, we'll
boss.
see what happens there.
We've done nice specific player versions of those things for which specifically when you tame the beast, so that they're not sitting there spamming skills in your hideout and all of that.
Good. Yes. So
But also, like, there actually are player versions of the mods that Res can get, like, so that we can balance them if we need to.
Yeah.
Because some of that stuff would be ridiculous if you had it yourself. So you know, basically, we still have it sort of work. It mostly works the same way, but there will just be numbers tweaked to the player versions.
That makes sense.
And the same works as well for the what do you call it? The ritual sacrifice.
Headhunter, yeah.
Headhunter and stuff like that. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's player versions of the monster mods for that.
yeah, this new attention to these things is going to
Virtual
benefit, like, the
sacrifice?
pre-existing stuff like Headhunter and that as well. Yeah.
Oh, what
that's
what the
insane.
Huntress did with like stabbing the
new-
beast, like the monster
Probably
just.
should let people discover it. There's a new unique
on.
charm that possesses you with a random Asmeri spirit as well, and so you get the daemons and the stats. And those technically also have player versions too, but actually,
Oh, thank you for
not to
following.
necessarily make things worse, to make things better, because
Howdy, howdy.
New
monsters
follower.
are balanced to fight player.
Nice.
Player life and monster life,
yeah.
not in the same universe. So, actually, what we've done is all the things you steal that are monsters and the monster skills, like the explosions and the summoning bears and all that, we've actually specifically balanced them way up to be more effective against monster.
All
So
good
when you
listening
steal
to
them,
the
they're much more
podcast.
powerful, actually. Just so they're not just tickling monsters and doing 1% of their life kind of thing.
Okay.
It was mentioned in chat actually, the whole like Asmeri modifiers and things on stuff that wouldn't transfer over with the companion system, surely.
No.
That would be a little bit too far,
Yeah,
perhaps a
yeah.
bit unhinged.
We actually had to, because this is certainly a benefit. Once you have tamed the beast, it is not tradable. And people might
Oh.
immediately be like, oh, so that's sad. Well, the issue is, and as much as you might want some of that, I'm sure you don't want to be carrying around a whole bunch of tame beasts in your inventory all the time. So that every
Yeah.
single time you find a good rare, all of a sudden you have to go and...
Because the rumor that
flame
finding
it.
a
Oh
rare would
God,
become a
yes.
thing. Yes, exactly.
It's actually
I
like
didn't
this
think about that.
annoying, in
Yeah.
order to make the most money, I have to be constantly thinking
Yeah.
about and carrying around tame
But then we
beasts
also
and-
made it so that as soon as you activate a beast, then no one who comes into the instance after
Yeah,
that
so
is
you-
allowed to
so you
tame it.
can't do
so
any,
you
like-
can't TFT the
Yeah.
yeah. It's like a whole there's like a lot of thinking about
Oh
that
my
stuff in
God.
order
Yeah.
to make it so that yeah.
That's
It's
good
a
though.
sad thing to
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to have lost, but
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is like, no,
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not signing up.
I
for
didn't
that.
even think about that.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
like, the like needing for cheat sheets and
Yeah,
guides
exactly,
and stuff.
right.
Like,
And so you
which
have to be
beats
really
worth the
careful.
worth
You have to be
some
so
currency
careful.
this week.
And then the thing is like it's like we design this thing and then think, oh, trading beasts is going to be fun, but then you realize that the horrific reality
actually.
of what it will turn into. It's like, yeah, okay,
Oh,
well,
no.
you know, but yeah, at least
It's like
at least we're
trading
thinking about that
corpses
kind of
all
thing,
over again, right?
like, with more experience that we have now early, so that we don't sort of
been
run
down
into
that
those
road
problems.
before.
Exactly.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
I'm glad we've learned from past
Yep.
issues with that sort of trading.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, talking about some of the other new skills, we had the addition of the rower, which was teased quite some time ago, I think.
Yes.
But
An
you've got it in and
Exocon.
working now, and it looks
Yes.
like it's moving around
No,
pretty
pre
good.
Yes,
and
yes.
Self-con maybe.
It's obviously you've got like a big downside. If you get knocked off at heavy stun and stuff, you can't use melee from it, so it's for ranged attacks.
Yeah.
But it does seem like one of those things that it's going to be like everyone's going to use or no one's going to use because it's a clear speed machine.
It is a concern. I mean, look, my ideal situation is that you're using it sometimes and not using it other times. Like, if you're using it like during clear, I think it will, like you will definitely want to, but we want to just make sure that we've got like sort of fun things like that, and like it's just a cool fantasy. Like there's stuff like that I just want to get in, and it's like look, if it doesn't work
Yeah.
later, if we have to nerf it,
I haven't fully
sure,
understood the
I suppose,
beast
but like I
thing,
want
to
something
be
like that to
fair.
exist.
We'll
We'll
have to, like,
we believe that it is.
rewatch, reread.
As much as we can. As much as we can.
You sound very convinced.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes, it's balanced. It's balanced.
Well, as I said earlier, you can probably get builds that get to the point of parrying indefinitely. So you can. That means in theory you can probably get to the point of riding a rower indefinitely.
Sure,
right?
sure.
Again, enough evasion and enough
Yep.
stagger specking into and all of that.
Yeah.
Well, fundamental question actually. Like, what's its move speed based on? Its own move speed?
The move speed is just your move speed, like
it's got-
but it's
but
what
without the
you're,
penalty.
but what you don't get is the penalty for when you
of
attack.
course.
Yeah.
That's the thing. But it's funny though, because
Okay.
like even though it doesn't have a move speed bonus, it feels like you're motoring when you're using it, just because of the fact you don't get that downside
Yeah.
anymore. Like you feel like you're the fastest thing on the planet.
It is.
when you're doing.
Yeah, there are other like more mechanical benefits like. It's considered a companion, which is a kind of subclass of minion that we've added, where you can only have one of each one companion base is a keystone for another, but you can only have one of each type. So like you can have a tame beast and a rower with the keystone.
Oh, right, yeah.
But inherently you can only have one companion.
Right, so you can't use a tamed beast if you're using the road.
And then there are heaps of passives for like if you have a companion, like companions while they're in your presence and all that kind of stuff. Heaps of that stuff around the bottom of the tree.
Yeah, I saw you guys remade the minion damage is player damage node on the tree. It's you companion damage nodes become player damage nodes, and I was like, oh, that looks like I'm gonna take that.
Well, that's the like companion where it's like more the mercenary over to ranger huntress is more like you want your one powerful minion and benefiting that benefits you and you benefit it, and there's that like, synergy between you and your companions.
So since it is a companion, I like the idea of like balance wise. Maybe it ends up being that you're like map clearing on roller back, and then you get to the boss and you dismount like old school mounted knights who charge into battle and then dismount and fight.
Yep.
So if it ends up like that, that seems like that would be a pretty cool balance for it.
that should be the best way to use it, I believe.
Yeah, because then you gain access to your dodge roll for the boss fight where you need it.
Yeah.
And does the rower then kind of do a
True.
bit when you're not on it?
It
don't
can
have
attack,
dodge
but I
roll
mean, it's not
on the
exactly a
roller.
huge damage source or anything.
It's
Like,
certainly
Unless
better
the
to stay
rower
at
dodge
ranged.
rolls.
It's not the most durable of birds. For sure.
But it acts as a distraction. Maybe there's some
I
support
mean, it's a
gems
minion, right? Like it
can do
attacks
things with.
things and does stuff.
Yeah, you can support it with minion supports to make it more durable and all of that. So
Yeah. Oh, I mean, there's the one that's like the minion takes 10% of the damage before you do. So sacrificial bird.
Yeah, true.
Poor little guy. So that sounds. I'm looking forward to playing around with that one then. Speaking of new content, 100 new uniques this time. So how many are you aiming for? Kind of in general, is this about really like filling that roster
Well,
out?
we want to have every base type have a unique for the purposes of chance.
outside of boss uniques.
Outside of boss unique, so we want every
on
base
top.
type to have to have a unique that you can chance. And so that was with the eventual goal. One of the things, of course, that we had that was sort of a problem in early access is that because of the way, because when we were designing uniques, we kind of designed them like in order from base type up, just literally because that's the way the spreadsheets are arranged. It's like we ended up with all the low level uniques first, kind of before the high ones, and it was kind of it's like we didn't see that mistake coming. Like it was kind of stupid because
we thought we'd get
we
through
thought
way
we'd get through
more
them
of
all, right? We were like,
so-
okay, we'll get all the uniques, and so we designed them all. It's like, okay, we'll start working on the art, just go down the list. So then we're like, oh crap, now we don't have very many in-game uniques. This time we're like, okay, we really need to make sure that in-game uniques are a thing. There's way more of them. So the focus really is on making sure there's lots of cool stuff to find. Lots of really chase things that you can get. It's not.
So you discovered the sort order changing in the spreadsheet.
That it does help. Turns out. But effectively, like you should. It should be a lot better, and like there's lots of cool stuff there.
And we're just gonna keep going with that. By the way, like
of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
100 now, 100 later, 100 next. Just keep going until kind of honestly, we never really stop making uniques. Like
Yeah.
especially anyone familiar with Path of Exile 1's history, is every single expansion since the dawn of time has had new uniques added to it. So
Yeah.
there's a lot there, and there's going to be a lot here eventually as well.
So then let's talk about the idea of like players seeing a unique and be like, 1x, that's not very good. Where do you guys what do you guys want uniques to be in Path of Exile 2? Like, how powerful should they be? What should they be aiming to do? And how should they affect the rares in that slot?
I mean, it's always a tension because we want rares to still matter. Like, we don't want just your character to be just only full of uniques.
Yeah.
So it really is like the role can evolve. So at the start of the game, they're really supposed to be more about that. So the earlier game uniques are supposed to do two things. One of them is when you find them, they should be powerful for a little while.
Yeah.
But then also they have a some kind of combo thing that you might be able to do with them at end game. But we don't always know exactly what that might be. Like, I mean, we've got sort of ideas, obviously, but it's like we don't necessarily design them to say, okay, this unique definitely has like an in-game build that's going to be actually strong to do with it, and that's because you're kind of putting in things where, later on some other mechanic might come along or something might happen, and then people find an interesting interaction, and that's when the unique kind of comes into its own. And I mean, that's the same as like Magic card design philosophy, that kind of stuff. You just put in like kind of weird stuff and sort of maybe you find something. But obviously, it can mean that like when people see a new unique, they might they dismiss it. But then one day they might also be paying vast amounts for it if it becomes a meta build. So but I feel like a game has to have that stuff in it in order to feel like there's lots of interesting ways to experiment, because it's like the feeling of being the first person to discover some new interaction is an amazing thing, and then when people see something that it like feels smart, and it's like if we don't have uniques that just take chances and do weird shit, we'll never have that kind of stuff happen.
When we're designing a unique, we don't think about what's the value going to be.
Yeah,
we're not even coming out of it going like this is going to be really expensive or this is going to be really cheap.
Well, in some cases,
well,
you knew what you were doing with that Herald unique.
No, I don't remember. It's more of the charm and but that's the thing. Are you aiming for the honestly, there's someone said the other day, they're like, it's a successful unique is one that should be divisive. And I was like, I agree for the most part, but not every unique should fill that role. Some should just be clearly, this is powerful, I want it for sure. It is going to be on my build.
Chase.
And others are like, what can I do with this?
It
now?
should be a
And
chase
then others
unique,
are just like,
but only
we don't
maybe
know
for
if anyone's gonna
specific
do anything
builds,
with
not
this, so
for
throw it
every
in.
build.
And sometimes it doesn't get anything happen with it for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't know that necessarily. It's like, let's just take an experiment and throw it in there and let the players figure that out.
Yeah, I feel like you're with a lot of these uniques, you're designing a question. You're just like, I'm going to put something that's a little weird. Maybe someone will figure that out.
Well, I think as Rishi called it, it's a puzzle piece, right?
Yeah.
It's just a piece in the puzzle. You put it there, and maybe someone will complete the puzzle or half of it. Maybe not. And then others where it's just like, yeah, this is powerful.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, there are definitely some chase uniques in this. In this
Yeah,
situation.
100%.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So on chase uniques, then we've obviously had some like pretty crazy ones so far. Where do they want to be in terms of like how hard they are to get for players? Because at that point you do need to consider like how expensive they end up being.
It's really tricky. So whenever we're looking, so if there's a unique that's broken, I guess there's two responses, right? One of them is make it rare enough that you only get the brokenness after the point when you're at the point where you're supposed to get that, right?
Yeah.
Which is to say, like post pinnacle boss type, like a late level of character development, right? And then the other response would be nerf the actual unique, and it honestly is a case by case. Like I think that like Temporalis, for example, actually got nerfed in both ways. The actual unique was nerfed a little bit, I believe, although I don't believe it's maybe as much as what players might expect.
Okay.
But then also you've got whatever. But also we have made that one rarer.
It's still pretty crazy.
Oh, it's still
right.
crazy for sure.
Yeah.
But the thing is like you want to chase stuff, right? So therefore you don't want to just go nerfing everything into the ground the moment.
But how did they nerf it?
So therefore
Increase
that one
the
becoming
values,
rarer, I think
the
was the right
numbers?
answer there. Because it was way too common. Just due to the
We had also the issues with there were three real issues. One is Darkness at one point bypassed Honor Loss. So all of a sudden a no-hit run. It wasn't a no-hit run.
Yeah.
You had Guard bypass Honor Loss. So once again, a no-hit run is not a no-hit run. And then there was just like, well, how can anything hit you if you can kill literally everything on your screen in one frame, right? So those three problems. And so as the balance issue of not everything surviving for more than one frame due to a subset of builds, and those other two things go away, it becomes a lot rarer in itself. That it is much harder to require like very specific and ideally high skill gameplay. And then there's just like, well, it also was just too common, the relic that yielded it.
I mean, the expectation was that, because this is a hard challenge, most of the time when people try, they will fail. But the reality is, once you get the ability to do it, you just trade for that thing and get it every time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of meant that the
Printing.
rarity kind of didn't work like we thought, and now that should be better in both ways.
Again, for the PoE 1 players comparison, like it was far more common than Original Sin. Which was the same role in PoE 1's version of the Sanctum, just to give us some sort of comparison.
It's just much easier to actually reliably do it.
And it shouldn't have been that much more common.
Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. So crafting really
It's
surprised
actually
me.
insane if you think
guys
about it.
Announced
Because
I thought
Original
you guys
Sin
could
is
get, like, one little
fuck
thing, maybe
all
do
compared to
something with essences or
Temporalis.
something, but
Right.
we've got
Oh my god,
essences
another ad?
coming out a
No.
lot more. It looks like you've
I
got
snoozed
because
it.
you're violent. You can
So
integrate
greater essences are going to be much easier to get. One thing we didn't mention in the video is that like omens are way more common, because I believe you made the change. There's an omen in every
2.5 times more common, I think.
Yeah, than every thing. So like you've got stuff like that. Like we certainly knew that we needed to do more with what crafting stuff, and so we're kind of like, well, let's just make sure we're at least adding 3 or 4 things, like new things.
Yeah, just a variety of
Every
stuff.
ritual will now have at least one omen in the window.
Amazing.
So you can know
Wow.
upon finishing a ritual, you're like, what is the omen I'm going to get, and
Yeah,
hope it's a good one. And
Love it.
maybe most often it's not, but
But yeah, the greater essences, obviously, the Varlorb thing makes it much more common. There's more sources of them with the map and everything like that. So that'll be happening more.
Also
and
up
then,
the
of course,
price
there's
of
improvements
Varlords
to
in the
things
future.
like the runes. We've got higher level mods that you can get from them. There's like a ton more runes. There's like, we just wanted to expand the set, and having the kind of like the niche mods that you can get and craft onto things, like it just needed more options. And it's sort of interesting because like some people say, oh, you don't have crafting in
Mark my
PoE
words,
2 because we don't have a crafting bench. But it's like we actually have a huge number of crafting options, and the crafting
One of
being
those
good
new
kind of comes down
uniques
to like how many of
will
these kind of
require
weird
you to
systems
divine
are
it
there
a
and how
lot.
they can interact. But we just have
So
to be
that-
really careful because
Price won't like explode
you
again.
don't want to get to the point where ground items no longer matter.
Maybe even a
Like
few.
and I think PoE 1 kind of basically did get to that point for various reasons, where like people aren't caring about what's on the ground nearly as much. So we still want to make sure with every change we're making that they still use the ground stuff, that you're still excited for things on the ground, and so that's like a really careful balancing act, because they do directly contravene each other. Like the better stuff you can craft, the less important the ground stuff is. So it's a really sort of subtle balancing act. But I think that the stuff we've added here will definitely push things in a way where you feel like there's more smart things that you can do to kind of improve your stuff.
Yeah, well, I think done right, and what you're doing is making sure that the ground items do matter with each of these crafting systems. So you had that fundamental change where you can't just turn an item back into a white item.
Exactly, and that's very important. One of the biggest ones, I think, and that kind of then unlocks the ability to do more. And so the great thing about the socketables as a crafting system is that they don't compromise the ground at all, because they don't, they're on top of the stuff that you can get on the ground. So that's very good. But when it comes to the kind of the base mods, we
By the
do
way,
want to retain, like the
Siggy
we do
asked
want to retain for
what
the most
to
part,
ask them
the kind of thing of like
in this Q&A
that part of the
on
item
Blue
generation
Sky.
is random. It's
And I
just that,
messaged him,
and it's
or
just that
said
on top of
something,
that,
I
you get
replied,
more deterministic
and he
things that you
liked
can add
the
in addition
tweet,
to. And
or
then when
the
you do it
post,
that way,
sorry.
it works really well. So socketables work really well as a crafting system
So
for that reason.
let's hope he talks
So
about
on
quality
that
of
topic,
life features.
We've had this
Specifically hand-related, by the way.
You're always
Or
saying to me
repetitive
that, like,
actions related.
this rune system is our crafting bench, but
Yes.
players don't keep asking for a bench anyway.
Right.
So obviously there's like a branding issue or a
100%.
functionality
So
gap
it
here.
is funny because I was actually saying the other day that like if we had literally had that system be identical, except that the way it was themed was that there's a crafting bench you go to and craft extra mods on the items, which literally be functionally the same, I think, and required materials that are effectively the runes that you get. Then I feel like people would be thinking that we've got a crafting bench. But yeah, ultimately that is that the rune system, the socketables are what replaced the crafting bench in the PoE 1 style crafting bench.
And I guess it must have also been like with that initial kind of output of them was just not as many options as
100%
what you
as
had
well. So that is
access
the issue,
to.
and that's because they were relatively late in development. So now we're just sort of expanding that, and we'll continue to add more socketables probably with every release, right? Like,
But
we'll add
that
more categories
means
of them, or do different things.
even
It's
if
like
it was
expanding
late
the
in
kind of type of
development,
mods, because
they
there is a
like
thing
that
where,
system and want to keep
It's
it.
the more like in the base mod pool for items, there can only be things that are really
Apparently.
fundamental, and so anything that's kind of out there, we don't want to put in the base mod pool, because then you end up with this sort of situation where you get items that have got random shit you don't care about. Like the crafting
Yeah.
is where you want to have all of the kind of stuff that's like very build specific.
Yeah.
And so adding more mods to that pool so that you can do that is the right idea.
Why is it that you can't socket and rune some things, like non-attack weapons, for example?
Well,
It was more just a choice for asymmetry, where we just wanted
Yeah.
these things to feel different. There was also just like a little bit of a like, in the future, we'll add some system where we can do something else there. And so just not having everything be completely identical. Much like how, the quality on those weapons works differently, where it affects the skill as opposed to just, base damage.
I do think it is something that we should be probably looking into sooner rather than later, though.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah, because the asymmetry things, it's good to have, like, not everything be super homogenous, but because we're talking about the importance of it being that extra layer of control over your items, which you just don't have if you're doing spellcaster.
Well,
gear.
maybe we'll add an Arcanist's bench and theme it that way for the
Okay,
ones.
all right. You forced my hand. I have to bring this up now. Can we get some sort of like cohesive, all-in-one bench for disenchanting, salvaging, selling for gold?
Yes.
Arcanist benching at endgame. I get
Base
in the campaign
Siggity.
having these things be separate, but I like at endgame,
don't-
it's
you're not-
so much clicky.
You're not
busy
happy
work.
enough with them just being next to each other, putting them next to each other, and you know.
No.
No.
All right, I'll think about that one.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I've planted the seeds at least.
Yeah. Okay.
Done my part.
All right.
There's ways.
Max, there's ways. I like the sounds of that.
Well, at least for endgame. Like,
Yeah.
That's
I,
what
I
figure,
do.
yeah.
I don't want the world to not feel like it makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But
Having it that you can just,
endgame,
like-
you've got your hideout where they're all
It would
like-
have to be a hideout related thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, people.
Dude, we have
obviously use it
literally
within each other's personal
Doriani
space
as a
anyway, so
as a
the law
buddy,
goes out the
as a
window at that
pal.
point.
For sure.
So we've also got fractured, crafted via
can
an
do
orb from the
anything.
cleansed monsters. How rare are those?
How do you quantify rarity like that? They drop from the monsters. I can't remember the exact number, but like I think I was kind of saying like 1 per biome, which is the kind of total blob of cleansed monsters. But then that obviously does get affected by things like pack size and all
Yep.
that on top of that.
Yeah.
So is that
and
like
then,
5 maps or something?
Well, it
Uh,
depends on how many of them you kill as corrupted.
Yeah,
Because
so-
the ones you didn't
Yeah.
cleanse while you were getting to the nexus, those are the ones that then become cleansed. So
Yeah.
you kind of have to choose, like when you go into a biome, am I going to beeline straight for the nexus and then cleanse everything, or am I going to just fight them all as corrupted to get the rewards from that? So you're kind of choosing one reward or the other based
Yeah.
on what you.
That was
decide to
mentioned.
run.
Okay, so you can kind of leave the nexus for last if you want to.
Yes, if you want
use
to.
it to try and get more fractured orbs.
Well, you could-
Oh no,
could-
it's the other way around.
way
So
around,
do
yeah.
Nexus first, then it cleanses all the maps,
Oh.
and then now you can get the most chance at
Yeah.
fractured orbs, or you can fight them corrupted before going to the Nexus if you want to get the rewards that the corrupted maps have.
And we
It's
have,
actually
like,
interesting
for
that they
example, the
add, like,
corrupted bosses have
holy
their own uniques
stuff.
now.
Yeah, so you're gonna
to
want
the
that's
world.
There's a
basically
bunch of
wanting
new
those.
modifiers.
That's-
How they, so
I think they've never done anything like this in PoE 1, right?
And all of that
So
stuff. So
far,
you kind of really are like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
have a look at the mods.
right.
I like
Are
this. I'm gonna
there-
do this, then this, then this, then the Nexus, and then I'm gonna do the
the
rest cleansed.
Does the
I
cleanse boss
actually
have
thought they
units
might
as well?
bring back Arch
not yet.
Nemesis.
Not yet. Okay.
It does
Imagine
have,
Arch Nemesis, the
it
statue in PoE 2.
as well.
Oh,
It
okay.
would
So you get
probably
the- yes,
work.
the boss will
So
come.
and you'll
Make
display if
your
you hover over the map
busted
and it says,
fucking
like,
rare and just
contains-
explode
I can't
and
remember
loot.
his name. Then you run it and kill it. You will
Also,
get
it
a
would
fractured
look
orb.
so
at
sick
least
with
you
the
know that
graphics.
will drop one.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
dude,
with the fractured orbs being a way of fracturing, that's obviously super powerful for crafting. Are there any fractured items?
those can be
dropping
beasts.
pre-fractured?
Maybe.
Quite liked that.
I think we went with no
Yeah.
in the end.
Yeah,
we
not
were going to do
currently.
it, but then we decided not to. But we might do it later.
Yeah, so an extra add-on. Is there a particular reason for it or thought process for that?
There just kind of wasn't anything that really fit that exactly. I think.
At some
the main
point,
thing.
you'll want some
Actually
new
insane they
thing
bring
to
back
end
the
up where you're
Calandra
this-
map.
this feels
Personally,
right
I
there.
would rather just drop more orbs, honestly, and let people choose how they want to use them.
I like it from the perspective of dropped items matter. Like when you're
Yeah,
seeing
but
a rare,
they kind
and
of
then you're
already
like,
do.
"Ooh."
They kind of do here anyway because
they do,
like
because you
because
use
you
it-
need that
yeah.
as the thing with the fracture,
makes
so it's
sense.
kind of not necessary. I think.
dude, the new lighting
There's other
system.
little subtle things, like
Plus
for example,
Calandra map.
the
Oh my
cleansed monsters within cleansed
Oh.
maps can't drop equipment as a little thing. So they have much higher. Obviously, they're dropping things more like waystones, tablets, currency. They don't get to drop any of the armor or anything. So they're more like currency sources. As like an interesting
Yeah, if
subtle
you
thing.
want
Okay.
more currency, then play cleansed maps.
So I was chatting while they
So
were
we're gonna have a lot
chatting.
more
I'm sorry.
instances, a lot more omens, potentially ability to get fractured, recombination with the new, more accessible at low and mid
So-
tier
Design
recombination.
Wait, if I
4.0.
understood this now, cleansed monsters
This is
drop more
yes,
currency.
recombination is certainly
So if you
undergone some
want that,
changes.
but less
This is
bases,
a
which is
huge,
exactly
huge
what I
leap
want.
forwards compared
Perfect.
to
I know my
0.1's
gameplay loop, boys.
crafting.
For sure.
So was it just
Straight
about
to
that
the
you
Nexus.
had to
Here we
establish
go.
that really like humble baseline for crafting, so that you could then go crazy with it like this?
Honestly, I mean, look, on some level, it can just be like you need an economy. You need to see how things evolve. You know, we just don't want to do too much at once. I mean, although this may seem like quite a lot. I mean, but the thing is like, but in terms of the initial system, it's like if we'd have had all that at the start, I think that we wouldn't have been like, you know, we'll put it this way: it is hard to take the stuff away, so that's why we have to be a little bit careful as we do this.
Yeah, I
Gotta
guess
be
you needed
careful.
to kind of assess the fundamental things like the no scours, the no
100%,
ults, and stuff like
100%.
that as well, because then you can have a better idea of how to build off that, which I'm super excited for. Crafting.
But of course, and if
actual
you know
crafting.
us, like more, there'll be more. There's always going to be more.
Oh yeah.
so.
Oh, you gotta have a new craft for every league, right? That's how it is these days.
Oh, yes.
I expect a crafting system for every league. Thank
Yep,
you.
something like that.
That's somewhat actually our intention. So
yeah.
I love it. Perfect. So let's talk about endgame.
Just give me all the regional.
Had some humble
Nah,
origins
bro, they're
as
gonna
well
be
in the
like,
initial,
Have a divine.
implementation of PoE 2's endgame. Obviously, trying some new
Or
things, being a bit
they
experimental.
uber
not
choose those
necessarily just
cleansed
going
mobs.
PoE 1's endgame, but
Like,
how far of your vision was
yeah,
0.1's
whoops, we've
endgame? Was it
Fricked up the numbers.
want?
See you
I would
guys in
say
3
that
months.
The main problem that we had is there wasn't enough overlapping.
fucking
axes of
Dandelion
randomness,
on
as we
top
call
of
them,
it,
where
holy.
effectively, you need to have it so that when you go into a map, there's just chances for random shit occurring, and then that random shit
Random
might
shit.
happen alongside some other random shit. And
Hell
another
yeah.
thing together
More-
is like a new
more
scenario.
random shit.
I mean, effectively,
Random
like
shit squared.
yeah, exactly, right. So it's like if you look at what we actually added here in terms of like encounters,
Love how
if
they
you will,
just
whatever that
swear.
means to you. Like we've added kind of.
I
More
think
than 40,
Jonathan
probably
is
something
actually the one
approaching
that swears
50
probably a
encounters.
lot.
And that's if you count things like each
off
rogue
camera.
exile is a separate one, and each spirit's a different one, and things like that, right? So those are the things. But the big difference between the ones we had before and the ones we have now is that most of these ones can overlap with other things. So you have a situation where
No, it's
you've got
called
the,
shit, not
as
things.
Mary Wisp
I'm gonna
that like happens to infect the unique boss of the area, and then that leads to a combat situation that you haven't had to deal with before. Or then like you've got some essence thing that like or like, oh crap, that like this other wisp like caused the thing to turn into a boss that then
I
it's
haven't
just
fully
it's all that
understood
stuff
the wisp
combining, or, like,
thing.
what
I
happens
think
when
I
this goes
came
with
into the
with the
stream
strongbox, and it's like all that combining stuff, and that's what leads to the situation where you've got an exponential
second time
explosion
when they were
of
talking
like
about that.
possible
Either
combat situations, and then sometimes you just run into stuff
We
you've
can
never
watch
seen
it
before because
after
of
the
that. So this
Q&A.
combined in some interesting way, and that's something that definitely PoE 1 has got very well because it's got so many of these things that have been added over time, and it's also something that we took care to make sure that each league specifically did. So what PoE 2 lacked was, I think, that. And so that will mean, I think, that the end game is overall just much more engaging. Now, obviously, we're going to be adding more content and more of the other
Yeah,
stuff,
of
but
course.
fundamentally,
be
it's
more
like it
stuff.
was enough of. It was specifically more of that.
It will
type
be
of
very
stuff that we needed
interesting to
do.
see how
And
rogue
honestly, I
exiles
don't think
are.
we've even got enough yet. Like we want even more.
That will be
we'll
interesting.
keep
Like
on adding that
how
stuff, but, it needed to become a
damage-wise,
focus, and,
health-wise,
I think
how
part
will
of the
they
reason
feel?
is that, like when you're. Like when we were first working on the
I
end
can
games,
see
right? It's like we
rogue
need to come up with
exiles
the big ticket
being,
items, right? Like what are the the league things, and,
similar
like, the maps,
danger
and,
to
we need come up with
Syndicate
all that stuff. And
operatives.
so it's
When the
it's
league
the
came
little
out,
detaily
they
kind
were
of things that kind of a little bit
disgusting.
require a bit more like
They
time
still are.
and stuff to work on. Even though they're actually like relatively efficient to make. Like we can make a lot of them when we do actually sit down and design them.
type
because
of
they, they're like making a new strongbox. Like sure, it's like it's work, but it doesn't take like that long, if you know what I mean. But it is. But it is
Still
that stuff
takes
that really
long.
adds all the flavor and kind of interest. So we'll just be continuing to do that through the game. And I mean, even yesterday we were having a conversation about like making it so more of the maps, even just like regular maps, have more interesting just little things that happen in them and stuff like that. Like,
you know
like
what they
more
could
like
add?
What the campaign
If
has.
that isn't a thing yet,
So
you know
we
the
haven't
thing
like
where,
got there yet, but like as through early
Alva's
access, we'll definitely
Strongbox
be just,
thingy,
like,
the
introducing
memories,
more of those
you could
little
do that
details
as a
everywhere
tablet
so that you get the
where it
interesting
links
stuff.
strong
Yeah, so a bit
boxes
like those
together
exploration
in your
mechanics
maps.
in campaigns.
100%, yeah.
In some
exactly.
weird
That's
ways.
just, we just want to make sure that you feel that same way through the in-game.
So
as
it
well.
like
And with the leagues as well.
multiplies
Yeah.
And
or
like
adds
there's really
to the
only so
rarity
much
on top
randomness
of
that
the
can
rarity
occur
on top
within
of
a
the
breach in a
rarity.
map, and so they
Yeah.
will end up feeling ultra repetitive. Whereas, and again in PoE 1, you had the boss that could spawn occasionally. You had 5 different factions. Things like that, and it is very much our intention to expand on all the leagues to have way more random things occurring, mini bosses spawning. Whatever else, I have a whole set. I don't want to spoil.
Oh,
on
true,
yet
the
'cause
unique
that's a whole
tablets,
later
yeah,
thing,
true.
But
They also
definitely
exist
want
now.
to expand on all that. Even Expedition only has the one boss. It had 4 in the predecessor. Like we need to get back to having all of that depth and all of combat and all of those mechanics.
Yeah,
and,
true.
It'll help hugely, while also making sure we're adding new ones, of course. But what we definitely have learned is that our minimum standard for new ones is going to it should include all of these things from the get-go.
Right.
Otherwise, we're just signing ourselves up for like, here's 1,000 things we need to improve.
Right.
It'd be nice to actually get some of them finished. So that's going to be a goal going forward for sure.
But I think it's like it is where our type
Oh,
of
dude,
design
new
shines
breach
because,
bosses?
like adding content is no longer a process of like.
Bro, if
you know,
they
we
show
work on a thing and
Triula
then
in a
players get to
trailer,
play,
everyone
you
is
know,
gonna
like,
bust.
it gets into a situation where
Holy.
like adding content has more value than just the content itself, like
Jesus.
because it adds to everything else too, and so that kind of makes it feel like the world gets like larger in much larger proportion than what you have, and so like it's an n squared thing where like the square of all the stuff we add, so that, like basically it'll feel like it's ramping up in terms of interest as we add more content rather than just feeling like you're just continuing like rather than every league feeling like you just.
By the way, I love that
feel
Siri
it gets even
statue in the
bigger each
background.
time.
Yeah, like when
That's
you
a
add
sick-ass
Zero Wisp,
statue behind CGD.
It's not just about adding that; it interacts
That
with all
is
the other things
so
that already exist that
sick.
can
Exactly.
go ahead and affect.
Holy.
So that's tackling one of the ultimately, I think, the biggest.
Bro,
things,
imagine they
is that,
bring
like, the
Atsiri
core
back.
basic
Oh,
mapping of running an empty map was
fuck.
boring, and that's never what you want to be, obviously.
Dude, Atsiri with
so,
Piri
like,
2 combat, it
Some
will
of the issues there, I
destroy
guess,
you.
as well that were
They will, like,
exacerbated by that problem was the fact that the
like,
maps
it
were
will
so big
start
and that
at
there were so
Uber
many of
levels.
them.
Or
Obviously,
more.
that's getting a lot better with
Just
the maps
straight
themselves
out.
becoming much more interesting. But it seems like this corruption and
level,
cleansing
yeah.
mechanic is breaking up and giving you something to progress through as you move towards the next tower or next boss or next other mechanic. I mean, I guess there's always something on your screen that you're pushing towards, it looks like.
Well, we want to try and honestly, I don't even think we're even quite there yet. Like, we really want to make it so that you feel like there's lots of quests, as it were, in in-game, like not necessarily directly in the form of like here is a quest objective, but like that you sort of have this feeling of like there's like different stuff that you're like that
there's
you
a
feel
thing.
like there's a thing, like exactly right. You need to ideally like every time you do one of those, it's like there's another one just on the horizon that you're thinking about. So if we can achieve that, then we'll have succeeded. But it'll
will
keep
take
adding
time.
stuff, right? Like just more and more things, because obviously you need to have enough just core there to be able to get to the point of it doesn't feel like you're just repeating the same thing over and over again as well.
It seemed like this like explorable world map thing that you did for Endgame, being like looking like a physical actual map, was really wanting us to explore, but that wasn't really much of that. So you kind of
well, I mean, ideally we can. It's just about content, really. At that point, you just need to add more and more, and we'll keep on adding more. And this
100% get more.
and 0-0, I think, goes a long way to improving that for sure.
So with the corruption mechanic now, you're going to see some corruption on the map, and you're going to want to go there because it's a system that you can interact with.
Exactly.
And it's your skill
True.
points.
Yes.
So you're unlocking skill points from that, which means you're unlocking more of the Atlas.
So
It wasn't even a
on.
system
Your first
before.
Nexus,
Not
you
really.
have to run at a tier 1 map, and it will
Great.
drop 2 skill points. It'll give you your first two skill points.
Awesome.
And then you're like, all right, where's my next Nexus? That's where I'm going for my next 2. And then your next one, and you have to do them 1 tier higher every time. So the second one you got to do at tier 2 to get your skill points and so on and so forth.
It's
And
not just
that's it.
it's not just grind 10 maps.
Yeah, that was terrible.
good. I love it.
So yeah, it is very much like let's go and clear these corrupted Nexus, and then it's like, well, and there's the whole mechanic around it. But yeah, if you want to
But the
just
cleansing,
get my
right?
points as fast as possible, just go Nexus to Nexus to Nexus and get as many as you can. If you're like, oh, I can't see any Nexus, maybe go to a tower to reveal more, and then what you're doing way less frequently, mind you, thank goodness.
Yes.
But yeah, it's a lot more objective driven as opposed to just again random grind and random exploration. There's at least, and you should be seeing a pretty decent chunk of unique maps.
I was going to ask,
I call them
It's
unique
funny,
maps.
it's funny because I was pointing out to Matt the other day that the distinction between a unique map and a no, like there is no distinction anymore. We shouldn't even look at it that way. Like it should be that every map is like unique in some sense.
There's not a unique.
There's not a
system.
unique.
We have
map,
an
yeah, exactly.
we do have an icon for it because they are kind of in a different echelon. But yes, technically, unique map is a name that's a holdover from PoE 1.
Yeah, because you can use mods with them with waystones anyway.
these-
So it doesn't. There's no actual reason for a unique to be any different than a normal map.
You can craft
It's
it and
just,
enhance
it
it.
really
and
just
juice
it really just comes down to how rare they are relative to other things, right? So,
and how rare are they? How like
I mean,
150.
maybe
again,
in
so hard to
terms of
explain.
player screen.
yeah, I mean, look, as I said, I think
How many
that
screens?
How many? I had the numbers, I just don't remember them.
well, I mean, as I said, they should be common enough that you feel like there's always some kind of objective you're excited about on the screen, right?
Honestly, more common than I was initially comfortable with, and then after trying it, I was like, okay, actually, this is like, this is reasonable. So
Yeah, I feel like you initially probably want them to be common enough that you're like almost getting tired of those map layouts, so then you're incentivized to add more.
the good thing is, by the way, by adding more here, we didn't just keep them the same commonality as the 2 that existed.
Yeah.
Like they are just more common. It's not like part of the reason it wasn't as common before is because there was only 2, and that would have just been repetitive and boring. One of the other restrictions is that like the Vault of Kamasa was restricted to the Val City
biome, so to speak, and that was one of the Citadel biomes. That's like one of the rarest and latest,
Yes.
So it's like we've not only made that more common within that biome, but a lot of the new ones, in fact, all of the new ones aren't restricted to those city biomes, and thus they are appearing more frequently. And some of them are like, oh, you want deserts because they give you the essence map, or you want the mountain because they can give you this and that, So like, ideally, there's a little bit of just like you see the edge of a desert, and you're like, oh my god, please.
Yes. Okay. So that's what I was going to say. This like idea of exploration is like I felt there needed to be something.
I'm still looking forward to some sort of like
there's that one node that like
long
affected you very
term.
slightly, but obviously that's
Doriani
The one that
literally
was
changes the
Shattered Lakes,
environment.
for example,
stuff
as you
like
can probably
this.
imagine, only
That
spawns in the water
has to
biome.
become
And so there's a
a
little bit of
thing.
like, and so
If they
does
don't
Untainted
allow us to run
Paradise,
beach all
and
day,
so
you
does one other.
kind
So
of
there
need
are
to give
actually
the players.
three
Okay,
special maps that can spawn only in the
okay.
water.
You like those 6
so
maps and
go to
they're in
the
the
water.
jungle biome? All right, here is just a bunch of jungle
otherwise, how easy
biome,
is
right?
it to find? You said there was an icon. Obviously, you kind of have an idea of what biomes.
kind of need to do
is
that.
it like also something that's pretty visually
Long
Oh, there's art there, yeah.
spottable on the map?
There's-
Yeah, so the one we
looks
looked at with the
interesting.
one we looked at with the megaliths, which had all the storm and lightning. Well, on the map, it has a bunch of storm and lightning.
Cool.
So yes.
That's awesome. Cute. That's great. So we mentioned the Atlas passive tree, and you're seemingly, I think, you're getting better progression of that. But definitely an issue I had with it personally was that it felt very top heavy, both for the core one and also especially for the league mechanics, where like the league mechanics you don't get points until you kill the bosses, which to me feels like the end of it for most players.
That kind of was the original pitch of that, and I wouldn't say that's really changing here, but there is more we want to do with that, and I think that it could be made better, but 0-2 isn't getting a change there to that side. But in terms of the actual core Atlas, it definitely is.
That's
like
fair.
you're getting that earlier. There's more. It's a bigger tree. There's more interesting stuff.
There's subtle changes to getting them in the sense that, like, for example, the difficulty 0 pinnacle bosses are way lower life.
Well, that's actually
now.
good. That's actually a very good point. So yes, difficulty 0 is now like half the life that it had before.
Wow.
And so that's like a pretty
But
substantial
difficulty
change.
4 is currently the same
Yeah.
as what it was before. So it's same top end, but like easy, more accessible for more people at the bottom end.
Right.
Okay, that's
And
fair.
then also because of like, due to the reliquary key working the way it does, all pinnacle bosses can drop all uniques at all difficulties, except they are like substantially less common at difficulty 0, but you feel way less bad for running them at that point now.
Right.
So again, it's just opening that up to a lot more people to farm, and it's not so much dependent on if your build can't do difficulty 4, you're not really a viable character kind of mindset.
So much more easy onboarding for those.
Yeah.
Which will
pinnacle
give you your
bosses now.
first sets of points certainly a lot easier now. That being said, not if you're playing the most broken build of all time, because you're probably nerfed into the ground, let's be real. So with your new build, we'll have to see how that balance goes.
with their
but-
new broken build.
yeah,
ones,
well,
sure.
yeah, one of those
New
specters.
builds,
Yeah. Anyway, the ultimate point being, you're certainly going to get those initial set of points easier than before. However, you are right that something isn't quite right there still, and I do need to kind of explore.
We are going to do more with this like later. We've talked about this issue, but we didn't have time to do anything about it in 0-2 as much. But certainly by the end of early access, I think that system will probably look
The
quite
one
different.
way you
Part of
could
also,
do
as we
it
talked
is
about
give
before,
two
adding all those
options
extra bits
for
of content to the
each
leagues. It'll help
league
give more interest to the
on how
the
to get
trees
points.
and more nodes we can add to actually invest.
So it's
into.
not
'Cause,
only
if you
kill
think
that
about
boss,
a breach. There's
or
only
else.
so much you can actually modify right now. Right, there's a level of radius, speed, density of monsters, and like there's the standard stuff with monsters, but like you can only go so far when you don't have all of that depth of different factions and different bosses and different mini bosses and different itemizations or additional things with catalysts and whatnot. Like you are quite limited in how expansive a tree can be, and so
He
it'd be
called
nice
it
to get those
catalysts.
things in and also kind
They're
of
not
look at
called
the trees at the same
catalysts
time
anymore.
and reevaluate how that works, just
Right.
so we can have them be more interesting while
Aren't
we're
they
at it.
related to like emotions or something?
But yeah.
And now with the pinnacle bosses, if you're like halfway through a level, you don't need to. Oh, maybe I'll do that when I get the rest of the level now.
Yes, that was a good change. So yeah, as he was saying, as you were saying, you no longer gain experience or lose experience anymore from Pinnacle, so you could just feel free to do them anytime. I think that's just a
Excellent.
straight up upgrade, and I think that it's not like you were playing Pinnacle bosses for experience. So it does the
True,
downside.
yeah.
Is not
It's
a
like-
issue really.
It
That
also
would
is
be
a nice
interesting
thing of
though
really
if they
just
can do
keeping,
something
like,
about the
if we add more
unique
leagues, for
bosses
example,
and
end up with
farming
the domain
XP.
of timeless conflict
I
problem,
would love that.
where it's just like rotations to level to max level, like ultra.
Yes,
ultra
we
quick.
don't want that type of
Like
content to
at
be the
least
way you
now
level.
we can say like
Yeah.
maps are the way you level, like
Yeah,
that is
yeah.
what you're doing. And sure, you might get some sort of unique map rotation here, and maybe not. I don't know. It depends. But hopefully we can avoid that. But either way, like it's just really you're playing in maps to level, and that's what you're doing.
It's
and there's
not,
something
that's not
nice about
itemized
that.
content, right?
At
though?
least,
It's not something
at
new.
least until we've added Delve.
Well, sure. I mean, there will be future parallel in-game systems.
Yo,
right?
Delve mentioned, yo. Was not on
I
my
know you
bingo
wanna do
card.
something like
Yes,
Delve,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Holy.
You're a fan. You're a fan. I mean, you made the end game look like Delve, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's been a long-term problem, and one we need to properly apply to the other game as well. That the whole like can't do my content because I got a level, and I'm like, even if you're only like 15% in, you're like, oh.
Yeah. It's just not as bad.
Yeah.
It's just not as bad in PoE 1 because the leveling is faster.
Yeah, it's
so
true.
it hasn't been
Yeah,
on our
it's way
radar as
faster.
much.
So speaking
It's
of like,
ridiculously
map
fast actually in PoE
progression,
1.
there's been some fundamental changes
Disgusting.
there. You're telling me that now you can no longer drop maps below your current level of map.
It's correct. So yes, you no longer get if you're playing a T5 map,
Amazing.
you're
Hey
only
there.
going to get T5 maps, or if there's a boss there, a T6 map. But we've also smoothed the way the whole progression
Let's
works.
go.
So we've actually the map drops are way less random now entirely. When you kill the last rare in a map, that has a it can affect it. At T1, that was a 100% chance to drop another map of the same tier. And then as you go up the tiers, you can still sustain that using Waystone chance. So effectively, it's de-randomized that a lot. And then the way
Okay.
there are several ways that you can get upgrades. So in terms of like going up the tiers. So one of them is that when you kill a boss, that's a guaranteed +1 upgrade. Then of course you can still cube them up, 3-to-1 recipe to go up a level, or you can run it corrupted. And if you're running a corrupted map, then because it drops the same tier, that's like a sort of guaranteed. When I say corrupted, I mean the one that
Varlorb corrupting up plus
corrupting
Yeah.
up +1. That lets you do the run them the same level as well. So you've kind of got those three options, but it's much more intentional now. It's like if you're going up maps, it's like you're deciding, okay, this is a thing I am doing. You don't just kind of have that like it doesn't just happen. So it's kind of supposed to make the jump like. If you're just looking to sustain, you can do that, pretty much guaranteed. And unless you're dying more than the number of
I have
times you've got
one
portals, which is obviously the thing
major
now that you
issue
can
with
go
this.
through portals again.
If the player isn't ready
sustain is
to
gonna be a
go
lot
up in
easier if you are
tiers,
dying.
but you
then it's like
only
once
get
you've achieved
higher
that, it's like
tiers,
you effectively can sustain forever. Like the cases where people just
You
drop off the bottom and
you
have
can
issues
use
should be, like,
gold
way
at
less
Doriani.
common.
Ultimately, it's way
yeah,
less
but
random.
they have to really
way more
mention this properly
deterministic,
Yeah, yeah.
to new
and,
players.
Ultimately, you can, as long as you are able to do the not die all the time, you will sustain that tier forever.
Right.
Assuming you can roll enough, a high
Increased
enough
wisdom.
mod count.
Yeah.
And there is a boss here. I'm going to go up a tier.
Yeah.
And you go for
Yep.
the boss. You kill the boss. You go up a tier.
And if you
And then you sustain that tier forever as long as you can do the difficulty.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
And if-
just very clean.
And if you're adding more mods, which you do need to be doing to continue to maintain 100% ability to go up tiers, then and if you're doing that early, you're getting more maps than what other people are getting, which means you can do the cubing as well. Like it's just kind of like it just much more effectively gets the thing where good players can advance at the right speed.
You know what
normal
it
players
feels
don't
like?
fall off the
It
bottom of the
pretty much
curve.
feels
It kind
like
of solves all of
they
those issues. Like without,
push you
but also
towards
you're not going
the
to have just like
higher tiers
hordes of
faster,
low-level waystones
right?
that
Instead of
don't
you
need,
like having to like
as
slowly
well. So,
climb a
like-
ladder,
And
they're like
just, no, it does. There are still
like
you
pretty
can
much
get to the
putting a
highest tiers
rocket
relatively
chat on
quickly.
you.
You have to
A
prove
rocket
you're
on
good
you,
enough.
just
Your character's good enough, but if you're doing it, you get there, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty quick, and you can take it at your own leisure as well, and that's completely fine. So it's not like, oh, we've made it way longer to get to tier 15. Like none of that is really the case. It's just that before you could luck into getting to tier 15 quickly, with some level of biasing the luck, of course. Or you could just be like, what the heck, I'm like constantly running out and have a really bad time.
Right.
And so now it's just way, way more like predictable and
Nice.
honestly, it probably has way more of an impact on the sustain problem, which we didn't really, which we talked about, which is the respawning. I would argue this thing has like way, way, way more
Yeah.
impact on map sustain than the respawning does. I mean, obviously,
I mean, the respawning
You
also
need to
matters.
because
Yeah.
if because the guaranteed drop comes from the final rare. So if you were just dying, you would never get it. So the,
Yep.
the respawning is necessary in order to make it so that that's going to happen for players who like and obviously as
It
gets more
helps in
difficult,
both ways.
That's and you
Yeah.
get less portals. You start to get to the point where you're going to run into trouble. But if you're a good player, you should be able to get up into the top and sustain very well.
Yeah.
You mentioned the idea of maps dropping magic by default.
Yes.
Is that something you're still doing, or
I believe it is.
Yeah,
But
it
no,
was
actually, wait. But there wasn't a concern about that, which I wanted
With
to talk to you
Alps.
about later.
Okay,
which
well,
is
maybe
that-
maybe not.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later because the concern was raised that I think is valid. So yeah, we were going to make it so that maps drop magic and above, but we're actually there might be issues, so we'll discuss that later on.
Well,
non-decided?
Yeah,
undecided. Yeah.
Undecided, yeah.
You thought it was decided. I just
Got a week left.
Yeah, we've got a week left. It's fine.
Still figuring.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like much more deterministic progression
But
if
yes,
you're
that's
able to
the main
prove
thing.
the power that you have.
That's the
Well,
main
it
thing.
just should be, am I strong enough to do this? Yes, I can do it.
Right.
Not, am I lucky enough to do this? And
Yeah.
am I strong enough to do
Mm-hmm.
this?
Great.
One of those axes, get out of here.
Love it. So we've got rogue exiles populating the maps now. How common are these guys, especially with unique, since you get their unique guaranteed? I love that. The whole,
It's 1 in 8%, 1 in 12.5 to start with, but of course Atlas tree be Atlas tree. So you can spec into that. And
is there like a map modifier for that or something to guarantee it? Or something
there
like that?
are. I think in this case, this one is the exception, whereas you can get normally guaranteed of the other things. We wanted the exiles to be one that you can't just guarantee all the time.
They don't always have uniques.
Yeah.
But when they do, they're using them. The AI is very cool, like how it works.
I mean,
so
they
it
can
was
have
nuts.
0, 1, 2. I mean,
Yeah.
there's nothing stopping them from having uniques in every slot.
What?
But like, it is.
There's a chance of that would be.
It is
incredibly low.
absurdly rare.
I assume it's
yeah.
just roll per slot, basically, right?
Yeah, it is
it's
roll
roll
per
per
slot,
slot.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
But
So
you
we're talking
might have
like
a line of just
fraction of a fraction of a percent
Yeah,
for like
exactly.
all of them, but still like 5 or something like that. Yeah.
you can have them.
But they have quite a lot, like because they're a player. The assumption is that their other gear is also relatively good, so they do generally drop more biased towards dropping higher tier rares and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so.
they doing that like full set of items because
Yep,
you've killed
yep,
a player.
yep.
Cool, I like that. I always love that little thing. And I feel like it's even more important here in PoE too. So that's awesome. But just some of those will be unique, maybe.
We wanted them to be less common than the other content, but like way more exhilarating when you find them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But of course, again, you can speak into them at the cost of other things. That's your choice.
Cool. Is there going to be some sort of like warning that they're coming, or are you going to know they're in the map ahead of time, or are you just going to get ambushed by these guys? Leaf zone from off
You
screen.
won't know they're in the map ahead of time, much like anything random you run into.
But they talk though, and they'll say something before they.
They monologue before they murder you.
They do.
Don't know if I'd go to quite the level of
Again, when
monologue.
I said
but
some
sure.
when I said some insult you, I'm not joking. Like some do literally insult you, and I believe one of the monks is a pacifist, and he's like, I don't want to do this. Don't force my hand. He'll do it anyway. But,
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm just. You're just like running away.
Yeah,
He's like,
exactly.
don't make me
Don't
do
force my
this."
hand. Yeah, exactly.
but look, you can just run away.
Yeah.
You know. I
Maybe.
really like the here's an occasional spike in difficulty, and again, it's important that they are relatively rare for that reason as well. But I do want it to be when you find one, you are very excited to kill it, and of course, even though they portal out, you still have your number of portals you have. So unless you're running like a full 6 modded Waystone, just get back in there, and he's gone, or whatever, you've lost your uniques or non-uniques, whatever they had. But either way, just move on. You know.
There's
I
still
mean,
the rest
you
of the
guys
map
were
left.
somewhat forgiving with this. You didn't make it so that they take your items.
Yeah.
Yes, that would have been good.
That's an event. At some
Don't
point,
give me that
perhaps.
idea.
That's maybe a 1 week event or something in the future.
It'd be
And it's
pretty
like,
easy to do.
just take one of your items. And then you got a nemesis system where you can find them and try and get it back in the future.
And you had the tame rogue exile gem.
I don't tame's the right word.
Higher
exile.
You run up and
Yeah.
you can quickly be like, take $1 million gold.
Just give him a little snack. Like, yeah, you want to follow me?
I mean, to be fair, that would be a fun system.
It actually would. That's actually not a bad
Running
idea.
up and just being like, hey, I'm here, give me 100,000
Oh.
gold and I'll be your ally. Is kind of-
I know you've
Come on.
tinkered with the idea of a hireling system at points
Yeah,
in the
well, I
past, so now you've got your mercenary hireling system, right? Rogue Exiles. They recruit the one with good uniques.
Could be the new heist.
We'll
system.
see. We'll see.
Going down a little bit of a rabbit hole.
Oh,
yeah.
that would actually be the
So we
heist
did have some
system.
league mechanics come over
Where
from
it
Path of
spawns
Exile
like
1,
the thing
2,
in the
Path of
map,
Exile
and you have to
2.
decide
You're
from
gonna be looking
two
for more. Are
from
you
2
gonna
or
be
3
doing some
NPCs,
unique ones
and you
that
have
we
to
haven't
pay
seen
them
before?
gold.
I mean, we're definitely
And
going to
then
be
they join you
doing
in the
more
underground or
unique
something
ones
and
that-
do the
you know,
thing.
that are just completely different outside.
And
of what we're
depending on
here we won.
them,
Absolutely.
They have different buffs
But
and
I
skills
mean,
and everything.
I think that
That would work.
Like,
Yeah.
Sort of the hope in the long term is that each, like, as we kind of get, past the end of early access, and as we're sort of, just going out, that each time we do something, we're both adding a completely new league mechanic, but also potentially bring something back as well, kind of like as another additional kind of like, here's another fun thing. So that's probably sort of what I imagine will happen. But it kind of really is case by case. Like some things we don't want to bring back, some things we do. And my opinion can change on a dime as well. Like if someone suggests like a new way to interpret something, then I might be like, oh, actually that is great. So it honestly, people assume that we have a full plan of literally everything, but it's like in reality, it's like it's very much responsive to like what's happening, and like the actual plan relates to the things that like are definitely happening, right? You're talking acts, you're talking classes, you're talking like all that stuff is like definitely
the characters,
like,
the
that's
music,
happening. It takes a long time
the
to
art.
produce. It sort of happens in the background. You've got outsources, armies of people kind of working on that stuff, and then all the kind of like more incidentally stuff is very much like, oh, let's do something cool, let's just make this, what if we do this, and we don't have a I don't have a plan for the next 12 strong boxes. It's just let's come up with an idea, and like that's cool. Just a fun little project for a designer to work on.
How do you feel like some of the ones that were, I felt somewhat definitively part of Exile 1 in terms of clear speed, like Breach, for example, have settled into PoE 2? Do you feel like they're in a good spot, or were they a good idea to bring over to the game?
Look, I think Breach is. I mean, look, Breach is fun, right? I certainly wouldn't want to remove it. I don't know about like. I mean, there's probably been some balance changes.
I
to
mean,
it
it was spawning too many.
It has.
monsters,
Yeah,
so
it
let's
has.
just say that without a doubt.
It's much better
yeah.
now to PoE 2 standards, yeah.
It's too like currently on PoE 2, it's just too out of control. It just needs to chill.
Right.
There was a little bit of an assumption made where it was just like, well, you'll get overwhelmed by monsters, and it's more a matter of survive as long as you can. And then, of course, because you get self-propagating herald builds that are just literally can kill anything.
Which, by the
in
way,
every
heralds
direction.
don't self-propagate anymore.
Just get that out of the way.
Just get that out of the way right now.
The power of the characters kind of
Yeah.
distorted the league balance
Yeah.
in a way where it's like we have to, make some changes. So yes,
Yeah.
like it's coming down a bit.
I think we saw that
sure.
one coming.
Rest in
Well,
peace,
100%.
Harold.
I mean, look, there's a lot of things that people will say they saw coming, but it certainly does end up being the case that like the patch notes are. So by the way, we aren't releasing them at the end of this live stream. We're going to be releasing them next week. But they are going to feel like a bit of a nerf fest for sure, because like there's a lot of things that needed to get.
Let's talk balance.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, all right.
My
Settle in here.
expectations
Yeah.
and anticipations are that this first one is going to be an absolute wrecking ball of chaos and carnage, and see where things land.
Yeah.
But then maybe over time it'll become a sledgehammer, and then like a fine carpenter hammer.
Sure, that definitely should be the case.
As I said earlier, it's like 10,000 things will change this time. 5,000 things will change next time. Then hopefully we can halve it every single time.
People should really be going in with the expectation that like nothing they knew about how the game was balanced before is the same. Just forget everything you know. Like exactly. So basically we'll that kind of just means that like everyone who's finding builds like do it again. Like you are going to find more shit that is like outrageously broken again, but it is not going to be the same shit that was broken before.
Yeah.
So yeah, and
with 100 new support gems.
Yeah, exactly. yeah. So I mean, it's the hope is though that yes, you're right. It'll stabilize to the point, like I it will take time, but we will get to the point where we no longer have things that are easy to become outrageous with. Right, like the idea is like it shouldn't be that you can just slap a combination of supports together and then like you're just like destroying pinnacles in 14 seconds. Like it should be that.
14's a long time.
Yeah, okay, sure. But
You mean 14? That sounds like terrible.
Yeah,
Builds. That's not even on PoE.
yeah, no,
Ninja.
but that's what I'm saying is with no items, right? But anyway, so the point is that like the first time you fight a pinnacle, it should be a bit of a fight. But then of course you do get back to the ability after like when like kind of like continuing to expand, like continue to develop your character post pinnacle to the point of being able to annihilate them in seconds.
Yeah.
But it's just like that has to be earned. It can't just be that like just a combination of supports that you can get trivially will do that.
Or like a common unique, and then that's it.
Yeah, exactly, right? So,
yeah.
but it can be. But if you get Temporalis, it's like, well, now, like now you've
Now
got
you're
you've got some shit going on. But it really has to be that there is an economic factor involved in becoming ridiculous.
Yes.
I think the
and so it's
one
when
thing
that's not the case that we have a problem.
that I love
time we
about
need to
PoE
hit shit with
is
big, giant
numbers
balances.
will
Yeah, so originally
crush
I was gonna come in and,
everything
like,
at
ask
some
about all
point.
the specific things, but we
And
just
this is what
assume that, like, it's
happened
gonna be
with
chaos. So
PoE 2
I like the
again.
idea instead of focusing on.
I was able
kinda
to
like
farm
your core,
way
what are you aiming
beyond
for? What are
the
your
pinnacle
goals?
boss.
What are your
And I
what are
love
your
that.
metrics? So
That's what I love, right?
a number of like damage / how fast you kill a pinnacle boss.
Yeah.
That you're aiming for, and then how much players can exceed that, and you're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. So it really should be that you're not killing, as I said, not killing pinnacle bosses that fast at the moment. Like a good sort of benchmark for like just a guy walks in and like has kind of got something that's like not stupid, but also like not like doing something, you know, like not crazy. And we kind of imagine that they should have about 50k DPS doing something like that. But at the same time, anything up to 500k DPS is
10 times
you know is
fine.
also okay. And that'll take you from taking a 3-minute fight down to like a 20-second fight. Like, you know, that's your range of like potentially acceptable kind of things going on. But if you're doing above that, then you're in like, we're probably going to nerf you territory at some point. So that's kind of like the thing. Now, it's worth mentioning that like we've lowered like the life of pinnacle bosses to get that to be right and sort of things. Like the difference between a T15 boss and a pinnacle boss was just way too much. So that has been that's been sorted out. Like it's things like that we just need to sort of get things in the right place here. So that's a sort of expectation. Now, obviously, people are going to still find ways to get 10 million DPS somehow, I'm sure, even though we're like nerfing many things. But the thing I think that when we're talking about nerfs and how we want to do, my key thing that I want to try and achieve always is that whenever we're nerfing something, we're only nerfing the thing that was particularly like we're nerfing as little as possible to make it so that the average Joe who works in and just tries to do stuff is not getting affected by it.
Yeah.
Like, it should only be the like ridiculously broken synergy thing that kind of like has some way of dealing with it. That's
Unless that
that's like that's actually
basic
affected
guy
by this.
used exactly
And,
that thing,
I'm
right?
struggling to think of an example off the top of my head. Maybe you've got some of like, you know, a way that a targeted nerf that kind of
Well,
like.
I mean, like say lightning conduit, you're not gonna reduce the base damage of it because someone's able to hit for 150 million with one hit from it. Like that comes from the compounding, like top end levels of exposure, stacking, conductivity, and more so shock effect. Right, so it's more about like take away from the shock effect scaling side of things there and increase the base damage even, you know, like do changes like that where it's like for an average person it's now better, and for someone who is absolutely abusing's not the right word because like they're doing the right thing technically by their standards, that are using all those extreme factors, you know, bring those down a little bit, keep those regulated, and like it'll increase the average user's experience while narrowing, you know, bringing this down and bringing this ideally up a little bit in a lot of cases.
I like the idea that I felt it's somewhat reassuring to hear that there was actually kind of like a math here. Like ultimately you're saying bosses have X amount of hit points. It has 500k hit points, and so we expect players around 50. Yes.
Right.
So that's a clear number. Like we know that. Oh yeah, and we're okay with you killing that like 10 times faster than we expect.
Right.
But it's when you get it down to 1 second.
Exactly.
Then we're
10,
like,
10 times is fine, right?
And the problem with the more DPS you have, it is now I have to dodge less.
yeah,
I get more crowd control.
there's a snowball.
You know, it is. It really is. So you're always going to be incentivized to do that, and you get to this weird thing where now it's just like, okay, well, I think you after a while was like, I haven't actually seen a pinnacle boss fight that lasted more than 2 seconds.
That was really sad to me. Probably the saddest thing about the early access launch to me was seeing the first pinnacle boss fight, and it just like, and it's like, oh, you know, like it's like nobody had to care about the mechanics. The first time,
Gave it so many skills.
exactly right. Like there were so many skills and all these things, and it's like none of it mattered. It's like that's sad.
Yeah.
So yeah, we ideally was in a
Just
situation.
deleted.
I hope that doesn't happen again, but honestly, it's probably wishful thinking.
As I said,
yeah.
10,000 things before, there's still going to be
There's still going to be
many
more, and it will
thousand.
happen every time, and
It's-
people will find stuff,
Look, this again, by the end of early access, I want to say we're going to be in a real fucking good spot with this in a way that is not going to have so much abusive stuff.
Yeah.
Getting rid of that whole, I feel like I have to play X. Like,
Yes,
it is
that,
very
100%
demoralizing to players
Yes.
when they
Yeah.
played their thing,
Yes.
and all of a sudden something comes out, and they're like, oh.
Yeah.
I
And
gotta
so
change over to this.
the way you will know that we're successful is because you get more diversity in classes.
Yeah.
Because it means that there's no longer the thing that everyone has to play because it's easy to be
I mean,
successful.
you definitely saw that where it's like the comments of any build guide. It's like, oh, another Archmage build. Oh,
Exactly.
oh, it's just Heralds again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like this isn't even a build. This
go-
is just Herald again.
You go look at like what are all crossbow people playing, and crossbows is
Herald.
actually the least used weapon type, and so you specifically start there, and you're like, okay, well here's a bunch of people using these skills: hand of wisdom in action, hand of wisdom in action, hand of
Oh, yeah.
wisdom. Okay, well never mind. The crossbows are relevant, right?
Yeah,
Like-
even without stat stacking, it's still better.
Yeah,
than
and
it
it's
was.
like, okay, well, you know, obviously take some away from there, and then it's like, okay, well, what are you left with? Well, you're still left with probably crossbows are bad. So what do you have to do? And it's like, you know,
crossbows now, for example, just a quick change is like instead of using one-handed damage mods for added damage, they use two-handed and their base damage. And then all the skills now have a higher growth per level because they scale with other external factors like attack speed less because they have the reload time. So they will be getting more damage per level, whereas before most skills were very consistently growing per level. So almost every spell would get the same amount of damage per level regardless of everything else it had. And this is how you got things like Spark just being the dominant skill, you know, out of control, because it scales not only that, it scales obviously the number of projectiles kind of out of control, and with projectile and duration and other multiplicative scaling factors, you'll end up with just like, well, of course I'm just going to Spark everywhere. And so now it's like, well, Spark has these other multiplicative things, so it should get less damage per level. And this was in PoE 1, and was the right answer, and we somehow didn't replicate that exact thing that we did.
Yeah, everything just had the same damage growth.
Yes, we end up with exactly the same. So now every single skill we're looking at it and going, you're going to scale more, you're going to scale less, you're going to scale more on the damage axis because they have other things that scale.
And this just means that, like, when you're asking, well, what skills have changed? Well, the answer is literally all of them. Like,
Yes.
no skill will have the same damage as before. It's like a complete, a complete rebalance of the whole thing.
Expectation-wise, it means that any skill that didn't have a lot of things you could do for it will get more damage. That's
Yeah,
what it
that
does.
should be the case. But I mean, even as well, like when we're looking at things like, I sort of mentioned it vaguely before, but like I'm trying to make sure, like we are trying to make sure that like the combos that work early game still work late game, which is kind of another important element of that too.
Yeah.
So crossbow's been buffed a lot, and I also heard the other thing that was definitely getting a lot of buffs as Warrior as well.
I mean, we'll see how that looks. I mean,
Everything and everything
yeah.
up and everything down.
Yeah.
It's so hard to even
yeah.
like.
Yeah.
It's so hard to have like a cohesive message with the single like this class is better.
Yeah.
Because it's just, I mean, it's easy for mercenary skills or for crossbow skills because
Yeah.
I can look at those numbers and just be like, okay, everything's clearly higher.
Yeah.
But then in others, it's like it's
Well,
it's
that's
too
the thing
easy
with
to
Warrior.
say.
Like Warrior was like in many cases there was a lot of things that it was actually not bad.
Yeah.
Like it was good in many ways.
But then it didn't have anything that was outrageously broken like how the other classes did. In
yeah,
the same
and it
way.
didn't gel with all players in many ways as well.
I mean, we've also done balance changes on literally every ascendancy class as well.
Yep.
You know,
Chaos.
Pathfinder has like 2 extra notables and some changes.
Ooh.
You've got a new notable on Chronomancer. You've got a changes to, like, you know, Chrono was way too much utility stuff. Like, where's just my like good thing, you know? So like you got like a good
Where's my
thing,
bonk node?
you know? Yeah, less niche, more something. And then we've just done that on every single class. We've upped a lot of the undertaken or bad things, and we've downed a lot of the really good, powerful things that were over the top. So
this is why we've gone back to the more conventional patch note cycle of a couple of days beforehand, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, look, absolutely.
Like, if they were ready, you would have them. They're not ready because we're not finished, right? Like, and giving someone half the balance changes doesn't allow them to even make educated decisions on what they're
doesn't
going to
help
play.
you.
So it's
or
just
them.
completely pointless at that
So
point. Yeah,
we'd rather give you everything all at once instead of just some like here's, you know.
But even once you have the patch notes, like don't even be under the mistaken illusion that you'll be somehow able to determine what the best builds are from that. Like this, because it's such a big difference.
It's
so
hard
many
to take
changes,
things
yeah.
into context because you can look at
Yeah.
it and say, oh, okay, so like this thing got buffed, but this thing got nerfed. It's like, okay, but you're linking just two things. You're not linking
Yeah.
all of the other things. that
Yeah,
go into it.
exactly. So you know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
very-
We'll try though. We'll try.
Yeah, sure, give it a shot. Do your best.
Look, when the game released,
Yeah.
you had to learn everything. You just might have to do it again
Mm-hmm.
and again. Every single patch every major patch after this, you know, you're going to have
Release
to have
two.
less and less of that, and your familiarity will be able to come in and be useful. So at least from a balance perspective at this point, like you know, it's not like we've structurally changed the campaign and all that. So you have still a lot of information and knowledge that is going to help you play the game better anyway. From on your you know second. I mean, a lot of people maybe made multiple characters, but for a lot of people, this might just be their second character.
Yeah.
So they're certainly going to be more equipped. And we've had the races, so you've been able to see how the best people
Oh
play.
yeah. Oh yeah. There's definitely some good tips to learn from there. Oh yeah. That lever skip with the portal. Oof, beautiful. My favorite. On the slightly bigger picture as well, like life and armor versus energy shields. Are you happy with kind of where either of those are at, or what do you kind of hope to achieve with them?
Energy shield certainly, I mean, primarily due to Grim Feast. And like mana stacking being a little bit out of control that's been too strong and more the int side of defense for sure. Expect some pretty drastic changes there. As for armor, well,
You know, it's one of those like accuracy kind of things, right? Where it's like or dexterity and like you know, where it's like honestly our next point with that is honestly just to get in a room and just be like, all right, let's pretend it didn't exist and we were coming up with the game from scratch and you know, we're like, okay, we have strength. What would we want the ideal defense to be? And honestly, it might even extend further than that. And really just see, firstly, to make sure we end up, if we don't end up at the same point, make sure we end up as better. Maybe we do end up at the same point and we do just go, okay, here are some other changes that we need to make around physical damage in particular or something like that. But it's one of those things where at this point we just need to like review it from literally back to basics and see where we end up, because it might be something completely different, but like it might also end up being relatively the same, and maybe it was the better answer. But either way, it's worth the discussion and worth the time, because you know, it's, I wouldn't say we're happy with it, and I wouldn't say we're necessarily like all the way unhappy with it, but it's, yeah, there's something not quite right going on for sure.
You're still fundamentally questioning some of these things and willing to go back to the drawing board on them, which is quite
Always.
interesting.
Well, 100%.
I mean, this is the time to do it.
We drastically changed how evasion works, and I would say it's for the better, you know, and we should be exploring that with everything. And, you know, so we just need to do that process still. You know, that being said, you know, as we make things more like the shield block better, as we buff the ascendancies or nerf them in you know, on the other defensive arcs, you know, things like armor will become better. But yeah, again, it's not quite right, but I don't have enough information to say, you know, where it will look, what it will look like in the future. So.
Yeah, okay, cool. So let's talk about recovery as well, because that's another big thing. I remember early on ExileCon discussions about the importance of limited recovery in making combat matter, you know, so that you could have situations where you're attritioned or where like the hit that you took matters for the next hit that you take, and you know, just back up the full. But it's pretty good in boss fights, honestly. I feel like recovery is somewhat limited. That still happens a bit, but certainly in clearing, you have access to tons of recovery with cannibalism and things like that.
It's certainly out of control, and it's a little bit of, again, partly due to the fact that kill speed and clear speed just was way higher than we had expected and what we balanced around. And because if we were balancing around what people are currently doing with the upper echelons of builds, you'd like, you know, you'd have to have effectively every average player and average build just could be completely, it would be useless for them. Now, there are ways around that, of course, but part of it is like a lot of the recovery mechanics, like if you're talking about things like on kill and based on damage dealt, it is a rich get richer problem. And so, yes, there are cases that are problematic, and then there are just characters that are too strong. And there's a little bit of both going on. I wouldn't say we've targeted any recovery specifically here, really.
Okay.
Like, it's not been a main goal. I'm not going to say that there aren't little bits changed here and there, but it's more about, you know, we've really made sure to just... it's kind of hard to say exactly what we've done because, again, this is probably a thing we're going to have to look at next time because there are so many changes that it is hard to even, like, understand how this is going to fit into
Once
all
the
of that
dust
now.
clears, you might be able to see how recovery is looking.
100%. Like, we're at the point where we do need a little bit of, like, all right, we need another round of testing for this because...
Yeah.
You know, and again, I'm going to stress it is actually impossible for the amount of changes for us internally to be able to be certain or test all of this.
Yeah, but the vision is still that idea of like more stricter recovery or less powerful recovery than what.
Well, it shouldn't certainly be like here's one little piece and now it's fully solved, right?
Yeah.
Like, having heaps of recovery should be something you can achieve, but it should require a decent amount of investment or high tier item itemization, right? Like. For sure,
That's a
it
good
should
summary.
be possible. It just shouldn't be trivial.
Yeah. So, and on that note, then, for like vision, what's your vision of what Path of Exile 2 is supposed to be? Because I think some people are still like unsure about, is it supposed to be just kind of more like Path of Exile 1, a faster game, or is it supposed to be a slower game, a much more different thing? Like, this is a hard thing to communicate,
Yeah,
but it gets asked a lot, and I feel like people are still a bit unsure.
It's funny though because like once again it's not, I don't view it as just a pure speed question. It's about like, is the combat engaging and fun?
Yeah.
And also, are you getting to the point where you never get to engage with bosses? Like if you're never if
To be
the first time
fair,
you fight a boss, you just destroy it without seeing
they
any of
have
its
achieved
mechanics, then that's a
that.
problem. and it doesn't really say
Path of
anything about the
Exile
pace
2
of
is
combat.
right
Like, if
now
you look
a
at some of
more
the,
fun game to
the
play
Hunter
than
stuff we've got
PoE
there,
1.
like it's incredibly
In
fast
terms of
paced when it comes
combat.
to like dashing
It
around and stuff,
is
but
just
you still have to
more
engage
fun.
with things, and that's the key element for us.
Brutally
So,
honest.
you know, like,
Visually,
obviously players want to
sound-wise,
get ridiculously
gameplay-wise,
powerful, and we
it is
still want to
better.
let them get ridiculously powerful.
But there
It
just
has to be
isn't
earned. It has to be,
enough
you know, like after a certain point, and
to
like
do in
after you, like
gameplay.
once you have finished
Or
your
the
character, once you've sort of done everything,
gameplay is,
then,
you
yeah,
know,
you should be
towers.
just like, you know, like crazy and like beyond the point of any of all reason.
By the
It's
way,
just
guys,
that
check your
you have
drops.
to
I
earn it,
just
you have to
got
get
mine.
there, right? And like that's the power growth thing. That's like it's really hard to sort of just like smoothen that out across the whole game, but like that's ultimately the goal, right? You have to kind of get to the point of like that. You constantly feel you're getting stronger. You always feel like the next, like, oh, I got this, and now I'm better, and now I'm better, and now I'm better, and you keep on going. And you have to scale that all the way to the end, because the moment that you get to the point where you're just trivializing everything too early, it's like, well, the rest of the game just becomes boring after that point, right? It has to be that, you know, there's the level of that you still have to get.
And so, kind of based on that earlier discussions about like damage and boss time to kill and things like that, it sounds like the time where you want that to be starting to taper off, like the players can start to cheat that a bit, is after they've done pinnacle bosses.
Well, you should feel that way multiple times throughout the game. But then later you still then get to a new level of challenge that
You
still
find
requires you
something
to
else.
engage again. Like if we're doing our job correctly, it's like you reach a point of feeling like you're a god, and then you're like, oh shit, but there's new god-like shit above me that then makes me have to then
Now
do
I have to find the uber gods.
exactly right. So you have to keep on with that train. And it's actually really hard to take you back from feeling like, oh, I'm all powerful back down to like I'm feeling, you know. And so you have to kind of get that in there as you
you
go
want that
on.
Dragon Ball anime arc.
Yeah,
where
for
there's-
sure,
there's, you know,
right?
there's
You
always
know?
a new level of Super
Yeah,
Saiyan
exactly.
after the previous one.
Exactly, right? That's what you have to be able to do. And so yeah, it's just smoothly taking you up that power level curve, you know, all the way to the end.
Yeah,
To be
so I
honest,
think like when it comes
PoE
down
1
to
has
things like,
that with
even
some
people
sick
clearing,
crafting.
It's about like
Like
if
when I hit
you're
that
able to just
in my
ignore
free-to-play
everything,
video,
because
when
you're
I
fast.
hit
Exactly.
that
If you're able to
essence
ignore
craft
everything,
and hit
then,
triple
then obviously you will
elbow
move really fast.
in
If you're not
Act
able to
4,
ignore
I
everything,
was
suddenly your clear
feeling
speed is
like a
not as
god,
big a
and
thing. So,
that is
so long as
sick.
there are still things that are challenging you, as long as you
That's
reach the
kind
next
of
tier
missing
and,
in
like,
PoE
everything's
2.
harder again, then you're good.
I feel like a point of the difficulty here between the communication of this with you guys and some of the people in the community is that I feel like you're not really looking at it in terms of PoE 1 versus 2. You're just trying to answer that question specifically.
Yeah.
So it's not really about
But
like.
that
being
has always
like
been a
PoE 1
case,
or
I feel
2.
like.
Exactly,
It's
right?
good that they're
just about making
mentioning
the combat good.
It's
it
either
in
the combat
podcast
is
stuff.
fun or it isn't.
Yeah.
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 And there's a sort of spectrum of stuff there, but I would say that you want to be able to engage with the boss. You want to be able to fight its mechanics and do its skills, and you want to feel like you can overcome those over time and get better. And you want to engage with monsters, and you want. And yeah, there's probably some people who are like, no, I don't. I want to just press a button and loot drops on the ground, and I don't have to look or do anything. And
Well, so that's an interesting point. Is there's this let's say the quote unquote mythical average build is are they able to switch their brain off and watch Netflix on a second monitor only if they're doing like maps 3 levels under what they should be doing or something, or should that be able to happen at kind of like
once,
where they're
once
at
you're at
normally,
once
or-
you're at your tier of godhood,
Yeah,
for
but,
that.
but I actually want to address that because, like, okay, so I'm watching. Well, okay, right now I'm watching Deep Space Nine, funnily enough, but you know, I'm watching Deep Space Nine as I'm playing, as I'm testing the game, right? It's like you develop a muscle memory, and that muscle memory can include using multiple skills and doing like, multiple things, and that's still to me more engaging than just holding down a button, you know?
So you're saying this like watching things on the secondary thing isn't about the game being easy. It's just a skill issue. You need to get
I wouldn't say that. I'm
to-
just saying that your muscle memory can develop from more than just using a single skill. You just, you know, like
Yeah.
And we've always sort of said that there's this thing where like, okay, sometimes you pause the show, right? Sometimes that happens because you come to a thing that's like
this is an update to the classic, you know, second
I
monitor.
love how
Netflix.
the friggin' watching something on the second screen has become such a
I
fundamental
know
part
it's just,
of
it's
the.
just the community's just grabbed it and it's
Yeah, yeah.
become a thing forever. But
Well,
it's been updated now. Like this is the update. You want
Well,
to have,
it
you want
was-
them to have to
It
pause
was a
sometimes.
philosophy set for a
because
different
I
game,
feel like I've
but-
said that 10 years ago about how like sometimes you get the spike in difficulty.
It'll
Like, oh
haunt you
shit,
forever.
you know, like now you have to do this. But yeah, I guess that turns into pause the video at this point. But yeah, but no, but look, if I play this way as well, right? Like it's not like I'm, you know, like once you get to a certain point, it's like, you know, obviously you're going to want to, you know, the music, you've heard it lots of times, you know, like you want to have something else going on. That's fine. But
Yeah.
I still think that there needs to be
Debatable.
the ability to have. You know, to have something engaging from time to time that you know, you
Yeah.
deal with. So, yeah.
It's always been a bit of a silly thing because you've got so much element of choose your own difficulty in Path of Exile, right? Like
Exactly.
do harder maps, do easy
Yeah,
maps.
But I mean, but look, people always want to choose the hardest stuff, right? So therefore, that's what they're judging it against.
That's true. You
And
do
so
have to
that's why
account
you
for that.
do need a level of economic gating to make it so that, like, you can't go too far with difficulty without, without having to prove the economic stuff on some level, so that you can.
Yeah, you're dying
So
and losing the map.
Exactly, you're dying and losing the map. That we have to think, like, all that map sustain stuff is so tricky for that reason. Like, getting that exactly right.
Well, it sounds like some big advancements in that regards. So I've got some kind of random tail questions here. Are you planning in the future on, I don't think it's probably happening this time around, but on changing campaign pacing at all? Like, I feel like some of the zones are probably a bit too large and a bit too empty.
I mean, that's more about adding more stuff to them than it is about making them smaller.
Yeah.
Like, there's still a lot more events in campaign that we haven't added yet that
Yep.
I'm still need doing. There's like big lists of things that we never got time to do, so we'll keep on getting to those. and do
The
them.
argument there, which I do believe in, is an area should be able to be large if it has enough interesting things. The
Right.
frequency of interesting things is high or
I mean,
consistent.
the size of an area is completely right. Like, imagine there were no load screens. You just walked from place to place. Like, you wouldn't be thinking about area size exactly. It's just, is the density of interest enough? The fact that there happens to be a load screen between one place and the other is not really the relevant
long
element.
is directly proportional
To-
to
to-
interesting.
Yeah, exactly, right? So so to me,
one thing we do need to obviously do, and we have done in some areas, is just making sure that if it is a large area, it's not just interesting things to find as well. It's also making sure there's enough monster variety that way it's not just so repetitive.
Exactly.
Yeah, where you've got like almost different biomes. In
There
some
are
areas.
some where I would say the area is large enough, or you're in there long enough such that there isn't enough monster variance, and so it gets a bit repetitive.
But yeah, it's completely true that anytime someone says, "Oh, this area is too large," I'm like, "Well, okay, so what monsters are we changing? What events are we adding? That kind of stuff, right? Because that's the way that you change it around. Like, there are areas that are very large that no one complains about because they're stuff
They got a
to
lot-
find.
they got a lot
There's
of things
also
and
like
stuff to
there
find.
are good. I don't know how many people are gonna play this or how many people stop playing before 011, but it's worth noting again. Like, areas have like the fast travel thing now as well
Yeah.
to
It's certainly a big
between
help.
checkpoints and
True.
there's some of that
That
stuff
wasn't
which
in the
I'm
very
hoping,
first
again, when
playthrough
people
that
start
I did.
playing from scratch, they get to see a lot of the
That can
improvements
help
we
a
did
lot.
before as
Yes.
well, and see how they
That will
feel.
actually make
again.
things
Worth
way
mentioning
faster.
through campaign, we've got both the wisps and there's also strong boxes as well through campaign. Like, they feel a little bit different. There's just as you
nice.
play through, you're certainly finding some things you wouldn't have
Shrines
last time.
soon.
couple more
soon.
ones.
Yeah.
Soon.
The what's it?
Shrines.
Oh,
We'll have them actually in the campaign soon.
Cool.
I think art wasn't quite done right or something like that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it might be a bit weird. The ones in the end game, it works a little bit better narratively, but using that asset throughout the campaign, it would feel real random. So it's just a matter of as soon as the art's done, we'll be chucking those in as well.
Oh, great. So that could be after release.
It would certainly be shortly after.
But also, like, every time we
Sweet.
do like that, we're expecting people to play through again. Like, we'll probably tweak like which content spawns in different areas, and we'll just like fiddle around a bit so that then you play it just feels a bit fresh, and things are going on there.
Yeah, you kind of got me there. I feel like each of the zones I'm trying to think of that like feel like they're way too big is like they're also just coincidentally empty.
Yes.
So I guess that is maybe
Well,
perhaps more the issue.
it's the exact same problem happens in maps, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we talked about that. Like the
exact
boring
same
empty
Yeah.
map.
When
problem.
the maps, when people say the map's too big, just not.
I think
it's a
I
content.
think I phrased it to Jonathan yesterday when we were talking about it as every screen looks the same as every other screen. It
But
wouldn't
th-
matter
this
where
is
I'm
the-
standing in the map. It would look.
I think the map you were talking about was step.
Yeah,
Like,
that
we were
was-
looking at steps and being like, okay, well, what's actually like.
It's a big square.
Yeah, and there's nothing going on, and even if there was stuff going on, I mean, like, it's funny because like it took us a little while to even come to an understanding of like what
Yeah.
needed to change there, because I'm sort of saying like, okay, well, like, and it's very random. So it's like, do you find the cold plains in D2 as to be a boring area because it's ultimately kind of similar? But the answer is, well, there's buildings sometimes, and you get like, there's just like there's just a little more going on in that way. So like, we need to make sure that maps feel that way too when we're doing them.
There has been a few pervasive crashes and issues like that.
Oh
So
god,
how's
yes,
that
yes.
going?
Well, I'll tell you what, the entire engine team have basically been entirely focused on that for 3 months, and it's been horrible because. So I mean, it's kind of a long story, and I don't know if I should go into all of it, but ultimately,
Yes, please go
the
along.
issue is that on Nvidia cards, the remaining issue at least is that on Nvidia cards, if you're using a driver that's bigger than I think 560 point something, like basically after that point the game crashes, and if you install an older driver than that, it doesn't. Like the crash happens in the driver in the GPU NVIDIA is just like not really much help, like, and so it's like just trying to nail down what even caused it. It's just so hard when it's like, and the thing that sucks about it is like it won't reproduce on anywhere except production and alpha. And like the moment you look at it, like we can't reproduce it anymore. And yet for some people it happens all the time. And it's just like, it's so horrible. And like, what we've done, we actually come up with a somewhat ridiculous idea that was now implementing, which we're going into 020 with, by the way, which is that, and this will seem stupid, but like, how about we just don't crash? Which
you tell me about this.
Yeah, exactly. So basically what we do is, what we're now changing it to is that if the GPU driver crashes, what we do is we create a new device and then upload all the textures to that. The game is paused while this is happening, and then it unpauses, and then the game keeps going. And so that is what we're doing to solve this crash. And it's kind of ridiculous that this has to be the solution, because like it's just mysteriously in the NVIDIA driver we have like
that's
and
the
we have
most
tried to find a
jank
workaround for this.
fucking
It is just like
thing.
so difficult. So that in 020 that's what will happen. So
While we're here, like, do the players have a workaround? Like,
well,
just
they
to get you up,
you can install the driver earlier than.
Sure. What
than
about
560.
what about the Vulkan? Does that matter? Is that-
Yes. Well, but no, not entirely. It does still happen in Vulkan, but it's a bit unclear about that particular thing, about whether or not that's less.
I
But
figured it might be
no,
a good
it
opportunity.
is in the driver. But I mean, yeah, like if you install an older driver, it will go away. Like.
So all of this time, when people have been saying the classic armchair developer meme, it was like, why don't you just add a bit of code that says if crash equals false?
Yeah, well, something like
It
that.
works.
Basically do the engineering
They
to
were
allow
right.
us to just recreate the entire GPU context, and then there you go, and then don't crash, and that is actually the solution we're now going with. But it's like the thing is, the other one that sucked though was that stupid damn full system freeze, because I'll tell you what, if the entire system freezes, there is just nothing you can do to find out what the hell caused it, because there's no like
report.
crash report, there's no logging, there's no literally nothing, right? And it's like that happened that happened when the Windows November H2 update shipped, and then things just started mysteriously freezing. And my God, that was hard to track down. And you ask Microsoft about it, and they're like, "Oh, we'll look into it." And it's like nothing happens. It's like Jesus Christ, guys. Like it's so annoying.
I can feel your frustration
Yes,
is
it's
palpable.
incredibly frustrating, because it's like we want nothing better than to fix this shit. So that one was fixed. Like there was some spin lock implementation that like. I don't have any understanding of why it causes this to happen, but we tweaked it a bit and now it doesn't happen anymore. And it's like there's no rational reason why this should cause the operating system to freeze. And it's like there's not even a good answer at the end. There's not even like a here's what was wrong. It's just like this random particular sequence of operations being done causes your entire system to freeze for no reason after this Windows update. And it's like, well, cool.
Oh, no
Like what do you do about that? Like it's just terrible. And so that one sucked. But basically now, I mean, it's funny because we've fixed so many crashes that weren't the crash. So like general stability,
other crash
apart
is
from that
fixed.
crash, is incredibly
like
good now.
99%
like-
down, maybe probably
And it's like,
99.99%.
and it's like, well, the thing is, we'll fix a crash and we'll be like, oh, maybe this is the crash, and then it fixes like 2% of crashes, and you're like, well, that wasn't the crash, but at least that looks good to fix, right? Like, it's so annoying. But as I said, we have a workaround now.
That's good.
That will basically recreate the graphics device if
So you might get a
if it crashes.
pause and then
you'll get a pause
unpause.
for 3 seconds, and then like roughly depending on
sounds like
hardware,
a
and then it will
good
continue, and the game will pause at the
I
thing.
obviously just make it clear we don't want it to remain like that. Obviously,
Yes. Obviously, we'll still try and fix it, but at least it means you're not crashing, and
Yeah.
you're certainly not freezing anymore. That's sorted out.
Yeah.
And then we found another one recently, which was like, okay, so this is another stupid one, right? Like, so anyway, so there's that whole like Intel CPU issue, like on 13th and 14th generation Intel CPUs, where like there's some freaking voltage regulation problem that causes CPUs to break in a certain way. And if that
Damn.
happens, then like the thing that will break is that like the decompressor will like it'll decompress something and like one bit of it will be wrong, like literally one bit in there, and then it fails like a hash check, and then that just causes the game to crash. And so the fix, like it's like things like that will happen
What
as well.
the
Like you've got stuff
fuck?
like that, and it's like, well, once
Just
again,
because
it's like,
of the voltage difference?
it's like it is our problem. We have to fix it because it's affecting real users. But like the solution to stuff like that it's just so annoying
sucks,
to find.
yeah.
And,
Because it's
you know, so, yeah,
literally
anyway.
Intel's fault because
it
of
sounds
fucking
like you've
shitty
improved a lot
voltage
of
thing.
the unrelated crashes,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you've come up with a good workaround at least.
Yeah,
now
at least
for that
hopefully,
one.
but yeah,
So that
anyway.
sounds like a massive improvement. But I
Yeah.
also just think your obvious frustration is very validating for people who have been frustrated with this.
Exactly, but the thing that's the most annoying about it is that like all these the engine team who are spending time fixing this, they're not able to spend time working on performance issues, which is something else that we need to be obviously improving over time. So there's been a few performance improvements, but like not nearly the number we would have had if we had all 7 of those people
tied up with
like
this,
like working on performance improvements.
Yeah,
So
fair enough.
that's been the most frustrating thing
Crash-
about it.
Yeah, you
crashes
just
those.
literally
Yeah,
burn
100%, but
hours
it's
of.
like when they're kind of
We have been
Of a
chipping
team.
away at some decent ones though.
Yeah, no, we have, yeah,
we
those
got
different
some
improvements. Yeah, yeah.
pretty
yeah.
good performance problems resolved.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, there was that
were,
ice one that was really bad.
Yeah.
And, there was things like that. So, like, the worst offenders
Nice.
we're certainly fixing.
Ice
but,
one?
And, like, I have no doubt by the time we get, each time we do a new release, it'll be even better.
Yep.
But, and by the time we get a full release, I'm sure it'll be, like, very good.
And I mean, speaking of, I know it's like tangential sort of as well. Obviously, we had a lot of woes around the release, but we've done a whole lot of back-end engineering work to make it.
Yes.
The
yes.
launch
Yes.
is-
So, the launch should go smoother as far as like, all
it
of
was
the
pretty
technical
good.
stuff. It was.
Wow, it still
But-
was 5 hours of
Yeah,
not
yeah.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like 5 hours compared
No.
to
Yeah, this time.
days.
I mean,
is
look,
the industry standard.
I'm tempting fate here, but like we've made significant improvements to the ability for the realm to handle stuff. So,
But I
5
forgot the
minutes
5
was
hours,
yours?
to be honest.
we'll see, right? You never know what's
played-
going to
I
go wrong.
played
but it
some-
should
that
be-
early
caught out by
skip for
something
200.
random
Yeah,
and-
yeah.
so-
Should be
Fuck
much
our
better this
flies.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope you get enough players to stress your theory. 'Cause
Yeah,
that's
true.
always a good thing to aim for. We'll just run up with a couple of the random kind of chat questions before we finish up today. Any possibility of Ascendancy respecs? Is that something you've considered, especially with all the changes going on?
We're sort of not in love with it. Like, it's just one of those things where, like, I feel like it's key to the identity of the character, and like respecing, like, the journey of the character, like, it does get pretty significantly compromised if you allow for that.
Yeah.
But I know Mark is especially strongly feeling
Yeah,
about it.
I mean, the answer is going to be the exact same as last time, which is like, I don't know exactly, or I don't know how to articulate exactly why I feel so strongly about this, and so do a lot of the team members. Of like,
Yeah.
again, it's just that your choices should.
No,
matter,
I understand though,
and,
right? If you're a
you know,
witch and you shapeshift
it's
and
obviously
suddenly
something that I
a
was
random
okay with in year
shrine
one,
can
and so
take
there is
it
probably
away.
a world where I will be okay, but there's got to be some level of work involved to achieve it. That isn't to just pay a little bit of gold and then you're done or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
I want to find a way to do it if we're going to do it in a way that is like grounded
That's
and
interesting idea.
and difficult to do. Well, not I wouldn't say difficult, but like requires some actual work to do. So
Yeah.
that would be the compromise I'd certainly be willing to explore, which I have been thinking about recently because I know every single time we come to an expansion, it's going to come
Yes.
up. So
The trial of respecting or something.
yeah, there'll be something where your character has to undergo some sort of challenge or something
Yeah.
to do it. And I know you could argue, well, doing the trial is that, and you're
Gotta
not
make some
entirely wrong, but
sacrifices.
something a bit more.
Yeah, it needs
Sacrifice
something
few-
else.
I'm
few thousand
sure-
enemies.
I'm sure we'll have a conclusive decision, or at least a level of articulation, one way or the other, by the end of early access.
Alright.
But for now,
I'll ask you then.
yeah, it's just going to take me a bit more time to figure out what I want to do there.
Is dynamic switching between keyboard and mouse and controller coming at all?
It's not in 020, but it will be coming.
It's on its way.
Yes, so
Work-
like,
being
and
worked
I'm
on.
really hoping by 030, like, we should be able to get that. That is a very key feature.
Nice.
It seems like it's going to be hard to loot juice maps with only one portal. Oh no, well, this question has already been answered. Well, actually no, because there's still one portal.
No, this is a concern,
that's
and we
true,
have to do
with
something
juice,
about
so
it.
we have to
Yeah.
figure
We
it
have
out,
to
yeah.
figure it out.
My
Yeah.
bad,
So
yeah.
in the next week, we will actually be looking into this one.
There's a few problems around
point.
it
Yeah.
still. There are other things to come up, like
Yep.
you know, you also don't want it to be that if you did use your one portal, because it's your portal that's used, not everyone's portal that's used. Because when it says
That's actually a
one
good point.
portal,
Yeah, it's a good
that's
point we
one
didn't
portal
I think we
for
mentioned
up
that.
to 6 players.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when it's 6 portals, it's 6 portals for up to 6 players, which means technically it's 36 entries and exits out of the map, right? And like that changes things in a way where it's like when it's down to 1, it's like you don't want it to be that, oh, I failed the map. Quick, Ziggy, come join my party, get in here and finish it for me. You know, you don't want to kind of have that style of play happening. So there are still some things we need to figure out with this because it's going to promote some what I would probably classify as degenerate behavior, as well as the fact that, yeah, you're probably like, oh, my inventory's full, zone out. Oh, what the? Okay, sweet.
And sure, you can add a warning, but I don't know if even restricting it to just one inventory of loot like that is good, right? I would personally prefer that it's one death, not one, entry. So there's some stuff we need to figure out. But again, Jonathan and I need to
okay.
talk about that and
That's
actually
fair.
solve that. So
That's interesting, yeah, because the death seems like the important part. So as long as it's not like a way to cheat it, it seems like almost like you'd want to allow people to come and go as they please until they die, right?
Yep, which is a potential solution.
Yeah.
But again, can't
Something-
say
Yeah.
for sure. But yeah, 100%. That person
That
is right for
seems
bringing that
better.
up, and it is
Right.
on our radar for this coming week to have, or weekend as well, to have a solution for.
Yeah. So with this new league not having a specific like league mechanic, is it still a challenge league? Does it still have challenges?
It's actually
No,
No,
there's
I
no,
didn't think
there's no
so.
achievements or challenges
Yeah,
yet.
yeah, yeah. I'm pretty
these
sure
is-
we weren't going to do that
yeah.
for a little bit yet.
These
but
are, there's not really, maybe later in early access, but for now, not really.
Yeah,
We're
that's
just trying to keep it more about
Make
the
the
game
game.
and the mechanics and less about,
Make the game first.
the achievements. And the achievements will certainly, an achievement system and stuff like that will certainly be there with the full release, and we'll reintegrate all of that at the time.
Is there any plans for stash tab expansions, like for example, rune storage?
Oh,
Especially
100%.
with more runes.
Right now, I'm actually trying to at least add the affinity without adding a custom tab.
Oh,
Those
good.
two things appeared from the implementation standpoint, so
Yeah.
I want to try and divorce them so we can have affinities without
we
it.
Oh, yeah.
wanted to get those in this patch, but unfortunately they just
Yeah.
didn't quite make it.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I mean, it's actually quite likely to come in sometime,
It's-
like in a point release after, like
Yeah.
like within the 0
Okay.
to
As
0.
soon as the patch is
Yeah,
out and
yeah.
stable and we're
Yeah,
on
yeah,
top
yeah,
of things, it's going to be like, all right, we need to get all those like UX or quality of life
yeah.
things that we blatantly missed out on.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think
for
that-
example, like being able to add bookmarks to your atlas and
Yep,
write
that's,
the name.
that is one
That
that
is
we,
something
we
we are-
designed
Oh.
some stuff for it. We just haven't got it
Yeah,
yet.
cool.
I want to say it's like 80% implemented right now.
Yeah,
Sweet.
So,
Yeah.
so it'll be soon as we
That's
can.
missing, yeah,
we'll get
true.
That in there.
That was like
That
mentioned
is
way
excellent.
before.
And on that note, we'll wrap things up today. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you so much, Mark.
No problem.
Well,
Thank you
thank
very much
you.
for coming.
And thank everyone
Love
for
it.
watching.
Thanks for having me here. Great time. Thank you very much, everyone. And I'm Ziggy D, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
See you.
One heck of a podcast, once again. One heck of a podcast. Damn. Lots of cool stuff. Love how they... Just love the vibe. Love the vibe once again. Just good times, as always. And yeah, now, for the sake of everyone's sanity, by the way, check your drops. The Executioner's Finisher should be available now. And I actually want to see now what I missed, because, for reference, by the way, I was in Vienna. I was bouldering with a colleague. So I came to the stream way later, but we did watch the trailer at the beginning. So now, or yeah, pretty much a trailer, the 2.5 minutes, but this is now the entire Dawn of the Hunt content reveal, and I think I missed about probably something until like maybe new support gems, so about 15 minutes is what I missed. So let's watch this, and then we'll have the full context of everything. And I'll probably rewatch it 3 times more, because keep in mind, I have to rewatch it once, take notes tomorrow, and then rewatch it again to edit it into my video. So it's gonna peak. By the way, a new PoE video will be coming out probably tomorrow. Maybe I'll just push it out real hard, just render it, upload it, and then at the evening, when I go to bed from Friday to Saturday, it will come out. It's not going to be this reaction. It's going to be something else related to the old PC. It's a fun video. I really enjoyed it. I might have to do some more tweaking when it comes to the editing, because it is a 21-minute long video. It somehow turned out pretty darn large once again, but we'll see.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Rogers, Game Director on Path of Exile 2. Welcome to GGG Live. Well, it's been a little over 3 months since we launched Early Access, so it's about time for our first major content update. Today, we're going to show you an exclusive reveal of Path of Exile 2, Dawn of the Hunt, which launches on April 4th. Twitch drops are enabled on today's livestream, so make sure you follow the instructions below in order to claim your Executioner's Guillotine finisher effect. Now in today's stream, we're going to take you on a deep dive into the new Dawn of the Hunt update. We'll cover a new class, 5 new Ascendancy classes, and huge expansions on character systems like unique items and support gems. After that, it's on to the in-game improvements, including changes to systems, a bunch of new encounters, and lots of other content. We're going to finish up today with a live Q&A session where Ziggy D will ask Path of Exile 2's game directors, myself and Mark, your questions from Twitch chat.
Well,
we have a lot to
we
cover
already
today,
had that.
so let's get started with a trailer for Path of Exile 2, Dawn of the Hunt.
Right. That's what we already watched. So we're going to skip ahead. There you go.
Now, as you can see, in Dawn of the Hunt, we're introducing the first new class since early access to PoE 2, the Huntress. The Huntress is a spear-wielding Asmeri warrior. Born into a society with strict traditions, she was exiled from her homeland after using the power of a skill gem to defend her village. As a dexterous spear user, she specializes in both melee and ranged combat, dashing into and out of battle. Spears have extended range and a short dash, but unlike other melee weapons, you can also throw them. In order to make a hybrid ranged and melee character work, we had to do a lot of...
Oh my god. Okay, sorry. I had to jump in here and pause. You know, there's gonna be... I will try to pause as little as possible. I'm sorry. Otherwise, this becomes another 5 hours and I actually have to go to bed. I thought when you throw the spear doesn't magically reappear. That's what I thought. I genuinely thought that. I was wrong. It magically appears back in your hand. It's a video game. Fair.
Thinking about ways to make it fun to both enter and exit melee range. The first skill you will get as a Huntress is Whirling Slash. As well as striking in a circle around you, this skill creates a whirlwind that blinds your enemies. Leaving the whirlwind will make it explode. The more Whirling Slash is used, the bigger the whirlwind, and the bigger the explosion. Once you're out of there, you'll want to follow up with something ranged. Whip your spear around to shoot twisters towards your foes. These twisters bounce off walls and can hit enemies multiple times. You can also throw twisters inside a whirlwind to shoot out extra tornadoes that do way more damage.
Nice. Okay.
In her offhand, the Huntress will usually want to hold a buckler, which allows you to do a new skill, Parry. While holding down Parry, your character will counterattack any incoming attack from monsters near you, stunning them. In addition, the monsters will take extra attack damage from your follow-up strike. Some specific skills are designed to be used after a parry and have extra effects. Disengage is a skill that does a quick jump back, damaging enemies in front of you, and it can be used to interrupt other actions, like dodge roll. If you use it against a parried enemy though, it causes an explosion and gives you a frenzy charge. Just be careful. If you parry too much, you're going to get stunned and possibly killed.
Ooh, I love that animation.
You can combine this combo with Whirling Slash.
Ooh.
Slash, parry, disengage, and you'll get an explosion from the disengage and the Whirling Slash. The Huntress also has a variety of elemental spear throw attacks.
That was the most busted one in Exile
between your foes. Or you could throw explosive spears into the ground. These spears take a while to detonate, but when they do, they'll incinerate anyone caught in the blast. All spear throws on the Huntress can also be empowered by frenzy charges. For example, explosive spears will do an even larger explosion and leave fire on the ground. And these empowered versions can activate even more combos. Using Whirling Slash over ground fire will suck it into the whirlwind, adding fire to the explosion.
Nice.
Using
There's a little bit of that tornado.
Will shoot out fire tornadoes as well.
From PoE 1.
And you can do similar combos with ice and lightning too. Now, a key aspect of hunting is exhausting your foes by causing blood loss. This skill is Rake, which dashes towards your target and unleashes a deadly slash, opening up wounds on your enemies. Follow up with Disengage and watch them bleed out as they run towards you. On the health bar of monsters, you can see how much blood loss the enemy has experienced, and the Huntress has skills to take advantage of this. For example, using Blood Hunt will thrust forward and cause a bloody explosion. The more blood loss, the bigger the explosion. If you want to cause bigger bleeds, try out Rapid Assault. The final hit of this multi-hit combo will stick a spear into your enemy for a big bleed. Now, Explosive
Okay.
Spear and Rapid Assault both result in leaving spears behind, either in the ground or in enemies. But there are other skills that leave spears around too, like Storm Lance, that leaves an electrical spear that arcs towards enemies. But what can you do with all these spears? Detonate them, of course. Thunderous Leap will allow you to jump onto and explode any spears, either in the ground or in your enemies. Now, as well as hunting animals,
Okay.
the Huntress also has the ability to work with them. While fighting any beast, you have the ability to tame it and use it as a companion.
Ah, that's
You can
where
only
it is.
have one companion at a time, but it will keep the mods that were on it. Try to find a rare beast with good mods to take full advantage of your ability to tame them.
Got it. That's the missing key.
Now,
That's
this is
why I
just the
didn't
beginning of the
understand what
Huntress.
beasts are.
We've really tried to make the hybrid ranged and melee gameplay work for this class by having a huge amount of synergy between ranged and melee options. There are 22 new skills available for the Huntress. By endgame, you'll be slinging hundreds of insanely powerful spears, sending forth spirit animals and summoning the might of Solaris from the sky. But we still haven't talked about ascendancy classes yet. What can the Huntress ascend into? Well, the first ascension class you could choose is the Ritualist.
Ah,
The
so they
Ritualist has
reused that.
embraced the darker side of his merry traditions by harnessing the power of animal sacrifice and plague. The Corrupted Life Force skill
They
causes
reused
all
that
enemies
artwork.
around you to grow volatile
To a
blood
degree.
boils on their
The great
skin.
they changed it.
When those enemies are slain, the boils will burst, spreading corrupted blood to all enemies around them. The Ritualist also excels in taking advantage of magical trinkets. The Unfurled Finger skill allows you to equip an additional ring on a finger around your neck.
Nice.
Taking Mystic Attunement increases the bonuses of all the rings and amulets you have equipped.
Oh wow, that's
Now, this
strong.
is one of my favorites. As the Whisper's Ask grants you a new skill, Ritual Sacrifice. Use the skill on the corpses of slain rare monsters to absorb the power in their blood, to give you one of their modifiers for a short time. Specialize further into Ritualistic Sacrifice with As the Whispers Demand, which allows you to perform that skill on yourself instead of a corpse. Cut your own hand, sacrificing some of your own blood to empower yourself.
Okay.
The Amazon Ascension is for those looking to hunt more than just beasts.
God damn, who the fuck was the artist and what the fuck was he smoking? I'm sorry, you probably don't see this through the screen right now because it's a stream and everything. That is so fucking clean. That's probably the cleanest mother freaking art I've ever seen. Holy shit. That just shocked me how good it looks. Good lord, I want that press kit. I want that in full HD. Jesus. It's gorgeous.
Trained as an elite guard to the most important Asmeri elders, the Amazon will use more traditional fighting techniques mastered to perfection. The Predatory Instinct skill will cause you to reveal weaknesses in the defenses of rare and unique enemies, causing you to deal more damage. You can see those weak spots represented on their life bars. While using Elemental Infusion, any charges you consume will infuse your weapon with elemental power, causing any projectile attacks to explode on impact. The Critical Strike skill is as simple as it sounds. It takes your excess accuracy and gives it to you as critical strike chance.
Accuracy
Additionally,
stacks.
you have skills like Mystic Harvest, which allows your elemental damage to leech life, and Asmeri Brew to be able to use either flask to restore both life and mana.
Wow.
So those are the two new ascendancies for the Huntress.
Huh, that
But
leech
those are
seems
not
interesting.
the only ascendancies in Dawn of the Hunt.
That's
We've
elemental
added a
leech
new
from
ascension
physical
class
damage,
for
right?
3 of the other existing classes too.
Or was it the other way around?
First up, for our warriors out there, we have the Smith of Katava. The warrior is a blacksmith in origin, taught by his father Renly. With this ascension, you can take your smithing skills to new heights by embracing power from the insatiable one himself, Kitava. Smiths of Katava are master blacksmiths and have the ability to forge their weapon, quite literally. Using the Against the Anvil notable skill, you can enhance your weapon with fiery destruction before any battle. After doing so, your attacks will release explosions on hit for maximum devastation.
Ooh. Nice.
You can also use the power of Kitava to summon an animated copy of your weapon to fight alongside you.
Nice.
A great blacksmith can do more than just forging their weapon, though. Their armor can be enhanced too. Now, you might think this ascendancy class tree looks a little abnormal, and you're right. There's a lot of notable skills all disconnected at the bottom there. By taking this point here, which is free to assign, your character is unable to equip body armors with mods of any kind. So your body armor must be normal. Sounds like a downside, right? Except now in true blacksmith fashion, you get to craft your own body armor by taking those disconnected notables with your points. If you want your body armor to grant life, take this notable. If you want resistances, take this one. There's so many choices.
Damn.
Think of it like you're crafting your own body armor, just in a more literal sense. Now, let's move on to those who prefer the reassuring feel of a crossbow in their hands, the mercenary. Alongside the existing Ascension classes, the Gemling Legionnaire and the Witch Hunter, you can now play as the Tactician. The Tactician is a former Blackguard elite. Free from the duties of a Blackguard, he is able to use his training to decimate the monsters of Rayclast and earn a healthy income doing so. This training comes in the form of various skills like suppressing fire, which causes all projectiles to pin enemies.
Oh,
When
that's kind
combined
of
with
sick.
the right where we want them notable, your pin not only stops your enemies from moving, but stops them from performing actions too, similar to freeze. With a soldier's training, the Tactician also works well cooperatively. Using the whoever pays best notable, you can place multiple banners at once. The watch how we do it skill gives a portion of your weapon's damage to your allies as well. But if that isn't enough, you can also command your army of off-screen archers to unleash hell and carpet an entire area with arrows. Finally, Witch players will be able to join their legions by becoming undead themselves. In Dawn of the Hunt, we're introducing the Lich Ascension class.
Ooh.
The Lich is a master of chaos and curses and could sacrifice her life to enhance her energy shield. The Crystalline Phylactery skill allows you to nominate a jewel in which to contain part of your soul, massively increasing its power. There's just one downside to splitting your soul this way though. If you have no energy shield, your mana costs will shoot up. The Necromantic Conduit skill causes you and allies in your presence to have unholy might, granting extra damage as chaos damage.
Okay.
Rupture the Soul makes enemies you curse explode with chaos damage when slain.
Classic. Let's go.
Dominion over Flesh allows you to apply an additional curse.
Nice. Classic again.
It's safe to say you'll be the true master of the occult by choosing the Lich class. So Dawn of the Hunt has the Huntress and 5 new Ascension classes, but it doesn't end there. Let's take a look at some of the new skills we've added. Now you may remember we've previously talked about the Raised Spectre skill. It's finally complete and it will be made available in
Nice.
the upcoming expansion. It can be found in the occult skills on the skill gem crafting panel. Raised Spectre is a skill that allows you to trap the soul of almost any monster in the game,
That's a beautiful
which you can then
animation
summon
as
in the
well.
skill panel.
Love it.
Spectres cost spirit and will revive automatically if they die, but the spirit cost varies based on the power of the monster.
Oh,
You
thank
could summon
God.
an army of weaker monsters,
Got to
or a
just
few of the more
revive
powerful
automatically.
you can combine them with your existing skeleton minions, or summon exclusively spectres. It's all up to you and how you want to customize your army of the undead.
God damn.
Given that there are hundreds upon hundreds of monster variants in Path of Exile 2, it's safe to say you'll be experimenting with this one for a while. We look forward to seeing which monsters serve you best. Now let's move on to our next skill. Since we've been talking about summoning undead so much, let's have a change of pace and summon something a little more alive. In Dawn of the Hunt, we're adding the Summon Rower skill. Summon your friendly rower to aid you in combat as a minion.
So
You can also
cute.
mount your rower in combat at any time, allowing you to move at full speed even while shooting arrows or throwing spears. Be wary though, if you take too much damage while riding your mount, you can be knocked off and get overwhelmed. It's worth keeping an eye on your stagger bar, as falling off the mount can mean almost certain death. On the topic of new ways to enhance your character, let's talk about support gems. Support gems are used to modify your skill gems in meaningful and interesting ways. Currently, we feel that a lot of builds have insufficient options here. To alleviate this, we're adding over 100 new support gems. Hemo crystals will enable a new kind of bleed build, turning the damage over time you would have done into explosive Vile crystals. Alignment is a support gem for bow attacks, which can reward skilled players with good positional skills. Caltrops will allow you to litter the battlefield with hazards, slowing your foes as you fling spears through their ranks.
Heckin' caltrops,
But
bro.
there's plenty more for every...
Oh my god, caltrops plus mines plus reactivated mine. Oh my god, dude. GGG. What are you doing to yourself? How are you gonna balance this? If I can throw a bunch of mines that re-explode, that shoot caltrops, that then cause bleeders, or cause poison. Oh my god. Don't tell him. Don't tell him.
Playstyle, such as enormity, unsteady tempo,
Big. Hobble. Interesting. Hobble is a new...
profanity,
Doom a corpse, okay.
retaliate,
Bonk.
syzygy. Yep, that's a real word.
Thanks. I was actually... Wait, what does that do? Support slam skills, use yourself. Hits from supported skills are considered crushing blows against ignited and fully armor broken enemies. Heavily stunning enemies which are ignited and fully armor broken with supported skills will permanently intimidate them. Okay. Crushing blows on ignited and fully broken. Okay. Might be interesting for like...
And many more.
Yep.
Now, we've talked about a new class, new
Football.
ascendancy classes, new skills, and new support gems. But let's not forget about the core of a true action RPG, the items.
Let's go.
To start with, let's talk about uniques. We're adding over 100 new unique items. This time, we've made sure to add uniques with a focus on mid and end-game tiers to make sure there are more exciting items to find for higher-level characters. Let's look at some examples. Embrace your inner devil with Chernobog's Pillar. It grants you a large amount of fire damage based on your block chance.
Looks sick.
Coming Calamity allows you to become a true master of the elements, granting you all 3 Elemental Herald skills without costing any spirit. At the same time, it penalizes enemy resistances. Waste Gate is a belt useful for builds using a single resource like Blood Magic or Archmage builds. With this belt, you can use 2 Life Flasks or 2 Mana Flasks. It's up to you. Now, we could go through these all day, but we'll leave most of them for you to discover. Suffice to say, though, we want there to be way more cool things to find. Over
That's a sick
time, our
shot
goal
right
is to add a unique to every single base item type at a minimum, so that you can chance any base in the game.
New tabula
Now,
rasa.
given that we have the Huntress, we have a set of unique spears from early game all the way through to end game as well. One example is Scyther's Spear, which combines bleed and fire in a powerful way. It allows your ignites to be aggravated, dealing substantially more damage. We're also introducing a suite of unique bucklers with some interesting parry mechanics. Kalgyra's Arc, for example, allows you to parry projectiles from any distance. And we're also adding our first unique charms. Bayra's Anguish will not only protect you from ignite, but will also emit a devastating fire nova whenever you do get ignited.
In sum, there's just a ton of new uniques to find. We can't wait to see the weird and broken builds that come out of it.
Now, we also want to talk about crafting options. In each major update during early access, we'll be continuing to add and improve the options here. We have various new crafting tools that have been added as rewards to many of the different types of new content that we're adding. But for now, I just want to mention the changes to runes. Runes add commonly available mods, but since they only have one tier, flat damage mods tend to get outclassed by endgame. So we've changed runes to have multiple tiers, allowing you to get higher tier mods than before.
Our plan is to significantly expand the number of more specialized mods for crafting using socketables as we add new content over time. And the first new set of those comes from what we're talking about next.
In Dawn of the Hunt, we're adding Asmarian Wisps, which can be found throughout both the campaign and
Yeah,
the
still
endgame.
don't know about that. Still new to me.
The Asmari spirit has made itself present in Rayclast, and it appears to be trying to warn, or maybe prepare us for the coming darkness. You will first encounter a manifestation of it in the Grellwood in Act 1, where you'll meet Delwyn, an Asmari hunter who is trying to find out what exactly is causing the spirit to behave this way. As you approach the Wisp, it will flee, leading you past monsters. Any monsters it comes into contact with are infused by it, making them more powerful. Each spirit is associated with a specific revered animal within Asmari culture. This one is a Wisp of the Great Bear, and grants enemies extra life and stun. The Wisp moves faster the closer you are, and as you move away, they slow down to wait for you. But if you get too far away for too long, they'll dissipate and return to the woods. As you continue to chase the Wisp, it will find and possess a rare or unique monster, granting it a new powerful ability. Because this was a Wisp of the Great Bear, this monster now also has increased life and stun. But on top of that, it will periodically summon a large spectral bear that slams with wild fury. If you're able to defeat this foe, you will be rewarded. For each monster that was infused and killed along the way, the rewards will be increased. Each Wisp has its own mechanics. The Wisp of the Winter Owl is a primal Wisp that causes enemies to deal extra cold damage, gain energy shield, and release wind vortices on death. When infusing a monster, they will call down large tornadoes to protect their host. The Wisp of the Wild Cat is a vivid wisp that causes affected monsters to deal more critical strikes and become more evasive. When it infuses a monster, it will summon a barrage of feline spirits that will attempt to tear you limb from limb. If you're
Yes,
lucky, you may even find sacred wisps that can do some pretty crazy things to the monsters they influence.
So yeah,
Like
they
the Wisp of
reuse the
Cunning
harvest
Fox,
bosses and
which
attacks.
turns normal monsters into magics, magic monsters into rares, and rare monsters into actual bosses. Asmerian Wisps can drop a new set of socketable items that allow you to craft a wide range of interesting new mods onto your items. Each one may only be used on a specific item slot. As
Okay.
mentioned, the Asmerian Wisps can be encountered throughout the game, but there's also a new endgame map called the Asmeri Ranges, a mountain village where the Asmeri once lived, now overrun with corrupt monsters. This map always has multiple Asmerian Wisps in it, and familiar, yet not quite the same boss fight. Asmerian Wisps can also be further modified by the endgame Atlas tree as well, and by tablets. But I'm not going to be the one talking about those things.
Yeah.
And
So that's pretty much until I was pretty much 21 minutes. God damn, so much. So there was so much still happening, and I missed pretty much half. God damn. Okay. By the way, Asmerian Wisps are clearly just an upgraded, more interesting, more demanding thing compared to Tormented Spirits. So that's pretty much what they are. They are now something that you chase in or that you follow instead of like they run away from you. You can actually kind of maybe control it. Who knows? Or maybe they have a set path. The moment you load into a map, they probably have a set path. Who knows? My guess is they have a set path also depending on the layout. So depending on your layout, it's easier or more difficult. So if you have pretty much narrow corridors, they only have one way to go because the map goes one way, right? They could maybe they even reused some of the code for Abyss because Abyss kind of works the same, right? It spawns at a location and then it follows a path. And I think it doesn't overlap. So the Wisps technically could overlap on each other, but they probably don't, just so you don't have any like weird shenanigans where it's like kind of like stuck in the same spot and turning and spinning because weird, you know, it's a video game, bugs happen. So that could be interesting. Yeah. Man, it's a lot. Man, that's a whole lot of stuff that was in this. Good lord. And boy, should I go to bed? I really should go to bed. I went bouldering. I went pretty hard. I felt really good. Today I was pretty insane. I think I did like 3 6Cs, multiple 6B pluses and everything. I tried 1 7A plus, but it would have required me to stay a bit longer. But you know, I already came late to the stream. But you know, trains do also be like this. But my fault for going later. Still, love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Highly recommend, by the way, check it out yourself right here. Of course, check out the entire YouTube channel with the full trailer and everything. On top of, by the way, both being 4K, not 1080p, because they stream it. So gorgeous. It also makes it maybe easier reading some text. And beside that, I'm looking forward. I'm really looking forward to, I guess, PoE 2 in general, right? Nothing specific. I think it's more of a, they have improved a bunch of stuff. They have added a lot of things, and I think it's just going to be a better experience than before, right? And that was the entire point. And I kind of want to said this literally in my video, but I'm gonna say it again. You know, I reuse my own content. I reuse the way I speak. Sounds kind of bad. No, I want to drive this point home. No update will drastically change the game overnight, right? But they have always done more than I could have imagined. They have always done way more than I could have imagined, and it's awesome. And I'm glad the game exists because it's free. It takes me literally zero energy to just get the update on launch date and play on a game with a bunch of new stuff in it. That's awesome, and I think that's kind of what we should focus on, because yeah, there's usually some I wouldn't say negativity or something. It's more like a little bit of like the hype machine, right? Of like, oh my god, when is this coming out and when is this like? It's free, bro. The updates are free. It doesn't matter if it happens now or in 6 months, right? There will always be new stuff. I will always have a reason to come back, and every single time it has improved. I think a lot of people might not see it as such, but I think I see it as that for years now in PoE 1, right? The game is better than it was. Pretty much every update is better, right? Doesn't matter if it's 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years ago. It is better. It is the best. And that's actually rare to say in some games. To say that the current patch is better than the one before, and the one before, and like that's sometimes rare with games, right? Just the only game that I actually have some emotional connection to where I can say this didn't happen is actually Cube World. Sadly, right? Where the latest update ain't better than the alpha. But yeah, I'm not gonna go into that. If you know, you know. But with this, I'm gonna go now. I want to eat something just a tiny little bit because I actually felt it in my stomach. My body craves calories. Like it actually craves stuff. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I will be posting the video tomorrow, as mentioned. I will be, by the way, on the PoE channel or the ARPG channel. It is pretty much the PoE channel, but it's an ARPG channel. Either way, that will be coming out. Hope you'll check it out. Hope you'll subscribe to that. We're actually really close to 2,000. I mean, we have been close to 2,000 for a while now, right? But it's like 1,900 and something. So that'd be cool. 2,000. Good number. And on top of that, I will be making a video on this. Maybe next week, maybe in a few days when we get some more updates, more teasers. Maybe I can like work them in. You know, probably will work on that throughout the next week. Maybe I'll release it on Wednesday, Thursday. I'm not gonna like overthink that video. I just want to like put it out. It's I always like reacting to these trailers and then just putting them into my video just for their just for the future, right? They're saved pretty much. And yeah, I'm gonna stop talking. I'm gonna get some bread and put some hummus on it and eat that. God, it's gonna be good. All right, thank you so much for watching. Hope you stayed hydrated. I'll be going now.